The Crystal Stopper by Maurice Leblanc. Part 2. Chapter 8. The Lover's Tower. The torture chamber showed beneath him. It was a large, irregular room, divided into unequal portions by the four wide, massive pillars that supported its arched roof. A smell of damp and mildew came from its walls and from its flags moistened by the water that trickled from without. Its appearance at any time must have been gruesome. But, at that moment, with the tall figures of Sebastiani and his sons, with the slanting gleams of light that fell between the pillars, with a vision of the captive chained down upon the truckle bed, it assumed a sinister and barbarous aspect. D'Aubrec was in the front part of the room, 4 or 5 yards down from the window at which Lupin lurked. In addition to the ancient chains that had been used to fasten him to his bed and to fasten the bed to an iron hook in the wall, his wrists and ankles were girt with leather thongs, and an ingenious arrangement caused his least movement to set in motion a bell hung to the nearest pillar. A lamp placed on a stool lit him full in the face. The Marquis d'Albufex was standing beside him. Lupin could see his pale features, his grizzled moustache, his long, lean form as he looked at his prisoner with an expression of content and of gratified hatred. A few minutes passed in profound silence. Then the Marquis gave an order. "Light those 3 candles, Sebastiani, so that I can see him better." And, when the 3 candles were lit and he had taken a long look at D'Aubrec, he stooped over him and said, almost gently, "I can't say what will be the end of you and me. But at any rate I shall have had some deuced happy moments in this room. You have done me so much harm, D'Aubrec. The tears you have made me shed. Yes, real tears, real sobs of despair. The money you have robbed me of, a fortune, and my terror at the thought that you might give me away. You had but to utter my name to complete my ruin and bring about my disgrace. Oh, you villain!" D'Aubrec did not budge. He had been deprived of his black glasses, but still kept his spectacles, which reflected the light from the candles. He had lost a good deal of flesh, and the bones stood out above his sunken cheeks. "Come along," said d'Albufex. "The time has come to act. It seems that there are rogues prowling about the neighborhood. Heaven forbid that they are here on your account and try to release you, for that would mean your immediate death, as you know. Is the trapdoor still in working order, Sebastiani?" Sebastiani came nearer, knelt on one knee and lifted and turned a ring, at the foot of the bed, which Lupin had not noticed. One of the flagstones moved on a pivot, disclosing a black hole. "You see," the Marquis continued, "everything is provided for, and I have all that I want at hand, including dungeons, bottomless dungeons, says the legend of the castle. So there is nothing to hope for, no help of any kind. Will you speak?" D'Aubrec did not reply, and he went on. "This is the 4th time that I am questioning you, D'Aubrec. It is the 4th time that I have troubled to ask you for the document which you possess, in order that I may escape your blackmailing proceedings. It is the 4th time and the last. Will you speak?" The same silence as before. D'Albufex made a sign to Sebastiani. The huntsman stepped forward, followed by 2 of his sons. One of them held a stick in his hand. "Go ahead," said d'Albufex, after waiting a few seconds. Sebastiani slackened the thongs that bound D'Aubrec's wrists and inserted and fixed the stick between the thongs. "Shall I turn, Monsieur le Marquis?" A further silence. The Marquis waited. Seeing that D'Aubrec did not flinch, he whispered, "Can't you speak? Why expose yourself to physical suffering?" No reply. "Turn away, Sebastiani." Sebastiani made the stick turn a complete circle. The thongs stretched and tightened. D'Aubrec gave a groan. "You won't speak? Still, you know that I won't give way, that I can't give way, that I hold you and that, if necessary, I shall torture you till you die of it. You won't speak? You won't, Sebastiani?" Once more. The huntsman obeyed. D'Aubrec gave a violent start of pain and fell back on his bed with a rattle in his throat. "You fool!" cried the Marquis, shaking with rage. "Why don't you speak? What? Haven't you had enough of that list? Surely it's somebody else's turn. Come, speak. Where is it? One word only, and we will leave you in peace. And, tomorrow, when I have the list, you shall be free. Free, do you understand? But, in heaven's name, speak." "Oh, the brute. Sebastiani, one more turn." Sebastiani made a fresh effort. The bones cracked. "Help! Help!" cried D'Aubrec, in a hoarse voice, vainly struggling to release himself. And, in a spluttering whisper, "Mercy, mercy." It was a dreadful sight. The faces of the three sons were horror-struck. Lupin shuddered, sick at heart, and realized that he himself could never have accomplished that abominable thing. He listened for the words that were bound to come. He must learn the truth. Dobrek's secret was about to be expressed in syllables, in words wrung from him by pain. And Lupin began to think of his retreat, of the car which was waiting for him, of the wild rush to Paris, of the victory at hand. "Speak," whispered d'Albufex. "Speak and it will be over." "Yes, yes," gasped Dobrek. "Well, later. Tomorrow." "Oh, you're mad. What are you talking about? Tomorrow?" "Sebastiani, another turn." "No, no," yelled Dobrek. "Stop. Speak." "Well, then, the paper." "I have hidden the paper." But his pain was too great. He raised his head with a last effort, uttered incoherent words, succeeded in twice saying, "Marie, Marie," and fell back, exhausted and lifeless. "Let go at once," said d'Albufex to Sebastiani. "Hang it all. Can we have overdone it?" But a rapid examination showed him that Dobrek had only fainted. Thereupon, he himself, worn out with the excitement, dropped on the foot of the bed and, wiping the beads of perspiration from his forehead, stammered, "Oh, what a dirty business." "Perhaps that's enough for today," said the huntsman, whose rough face betrayed a certain emotion. "We might try again tomorrow or the next day." The Marquis was silent. One of the sons handed him a flask of brandy. He poured out half a glass and drank it down at a draught. "Tomorrow," he said. "No, here and now. One little effort more. At the stage which he has reached, it won't be difficult." And, taking the huntsman aside, "Did you hear what he said? What did he mean by that word, Marie?" He repeated it twice. "Yes, twice," said the huntsman. "Perhaps he entrusted the document to a person called Marie." "Not he," protested d'Albufex. "He never entrusts anything to anybody. It means something different." "But what, Monsieur le Marquis?" "We'll soon find out. I'll answer for it." At that moment, Dobrek drew a long breath and stirred on his couch. D'Albufex, who had now recovered all his composure and who did not take his eyes off the enemy, went up to him and said, "You see, Dobrek, it's madness to resist. Once you're beaten, there's nothing for it but to submit to your conqueror, instead of allowing yourself to be tortured like an idiot. Come, be sensible." He turned to Sebastiani. "Tighten the rope. Let him feel it a little, that will wake him up." His shamming death. Sebastiani took hold of the stick again and turned until the cord touched the swollen flesh. Dobrek gave a start. "That'll do, Sebastiani," said the Marquis. "Our friend seems favorably disposed and understands the need for coming to terms." "That's so, Dobrek, is it not? You prefer to have done with it? And you're quite right." The two men were leaning over the sufferer, Sebastiani with his hand on the stick, d'Albufex holding the lamp so as to throw the light on Dobrek's face. His lips are moving, he's going to speak. "Loosen the rope a little, Sebastiani. I don't want our friend to be hurt." "No, tighten it. I believe our friend is hesitating." "One turn more. Stop. That's done it." "Oh, my dear Dobrek, if you can't speak plainer than that, it's no use." What did you say?" Arsène Lupin muttered an oath. Dobrek was speaking and he, Lupin, could not hear a word of what he said. In vain. He pricked up his ears, suppressed the beating of his heart and the throbbing of his temples. Not a sound reached him. "Confound it," he thought. "I never expected this. What am I to do?" He was within an ace of covering Dobrek with his revolver and putting a bullet into him which would cut short any explanation. But he reflected that he himself would then be none the wiser and that it was better to trust to events in the hope of making the most of them. Meanwhile the confession continued beneath him, indistinctly, interrupted by silences and mingled with moans. D'Albufex clung to his prey. "Go on. Finish, can't you?" And he punctuated the sentences with exclamations of approval. "Good. Capital. Oh, how funny. And no one suspected? Not even Prasville? What an ass! Loosen a bit, Sebastiani. Don't you see that our friend is out of breath? Keep calm, Dobrek, don't tire yourself. And so, my dear fellow, you were saying." That was the last. There was a long whispering to which d'Albufex listened without further interruption and of which Arsène Lupin could not catch the least syllable. Then the Marquis drew himself up and exclaimed, joyfully, "That's it. Thank you, Dobreck. And, believe me, I shall never forget what you have just done. If ever you're in need, you have only to knock at my door and there will always be a crust of bread for you in the kitchen and a glass of water from the filter. Sebastiani, look after Monsieur le Depute as if he were one of your sons. And, first of all, release him from his bonds. It's a heartless thing to trust one's fellow man like that. Like a chicken on the spit. Shall we give him something to drink?" suggested the huntsman. "Yes, that's it. Give him a drink." Sebastiani and his sons undid the leather straps, rubbed the bruised wrists, dressed them with an ointment and bandaged them. Then Dobreck swallowed a few drops of brandy. "Feeling better?" said the Marquis. "Pooh, it's nothing much. In a few hours, it won't show, and you'll be able to boast of having been tortured, as in the good old days of the Inquisition. You lucky dog." He took out his watch. "Enough said. Sebastiani, let your sons watch him in turns. You, take me to the station for the last train. Then are we to leave him like that, Monsieur le Marquis, free to move as he pleases?" "Why not? You don't imagine that we are going to keep him here to the day of his death?" "No, Dobreck, sleep quietly. I shall go to your place tomorrow afternoon, and, if the document is where you told me, a telegram shall be sent off at once and you shall be set free. You haven't told me a lie, I suppose." He went back to Dobreck and, stooping over him again, "No humbug, eh? That would be very silly of you. I should lose a day, that's all, whereas you would lose all the days that remain to you to live. But no, the hiding place is too good. A fellow doesn't invent a thing like that for fun. Come on, Sebastiani. You shall have the telegram tomorrow. And suppose they don't let you into the house, Monsieur le Marquis. Why shouldn't they? The house in the Square Lamartine is occupied by Prasville's men. Don't worry, Sebastiani. I shall get in. If they don't open the door, there's always the window. And, if the window won't open, I shall arrange with one of Prasville's men. It's a question of money, that's all. And, thank goodness, I shan't be short of that, henceforth. Good night, Dobreck." He went out, accompanied by Sebastiani, and the heavy door closed after them. Lupin at once effected his retreat, in accordance with a plan which he had worked out during this scene. The plan was simple enough: to scramble, by means of his rope, to the bottom of the cliff, take his friends with him, jump into the motor car and attack d'Albufex and Sebastiani on the deserted road that leads to Ormel Station. There could be no doubt about the issue of the contest. With d'Albufex and Sebastiani prisoners, it would be an easy matter to make one of them speak. D'Albufex had shown him how to set about it, and Clarice Murgy would be inflexible where it was a question of saving her son. He took the rope with which he had provided himself and groped about to find a jagged piece of rock round which to pass it, so as to leave 2 equal lengths hanging, by which he could let himself down. But, when he found what he wanted, instead of acting swiftly, for the business was urgent, he stood motionless, thinking. His scheme failed to satisfy him at the last moment. "It's absurd, what I'm proposing," he said to himself. "Absurd and illogical. How can I tell that d'Albufex and Sebastiani will not escape me? How can I even tell that, once they are in my power, they will speak? No, I shall stay. There are better things to try, much better things. It's not those two I must be at, but Dobreck. He's done for. He has not a kick left in him. If he has told the Marquis his secret, there is no reason why he shouldn't tell it to Clarice and me when we employ the same methods. That's settled. We'll kidnap the Dobreck bird." And he continued, "Besides, what do I risk? If the scheme miscarries, Clarice and I will rush off to Paris and, together with Prasville, organize a careful watch in the Square Lamartine to prevent d'Albufex from benefiting by Dobreck's revelations. The great thing is for Prasville to be warned of the danger. He shall be." The church clock in a neighboring village struck 12. That gave Lupin 6 or 7 hours to put his new plan into execution. He set to work forthwith. When moving away from the embrasure which had the window at the bottom of it, he had come upon a clump of small shrubs in one of the hollows of the cliff. He cut away a dozen of these, with his knife, and whittled them all down to the same size. Then he cut off 2 equal lengths from his rope. These were the uprights of the ladder. He fastened the 12 little sticks between the uprights and thus contrived a rope ladder about 6 yards long. When he returned to this post, there was only one of the 3 sons beside Dorbrek's bed in the torture chamber. He was smoking his pipe by the lamp. Dorbrek was asleep. Hang it, thought Lupin. Is the fellow going to sit there all night? In that case, there's nothing for me to do but to slip off. The idea that d'Albufex was in possession of the secret vexed him mightily. The interview at which he had assisted had left a clear impression in his mind that the Marquis was working on his own and that, in securing the list, he intended not only to escape Dorbrek's activity, but also to gain Dorbrek's power and build up his fortune anew by the identical means which Dorbrek had employed. That would have meant, for Lupin, a fresh battle to wage against a fresh enemy. The rapid march of events did not allow of the contemplation of such a possibility. He must at all costs spike the Marquis d'Albufex guns by warning Prasville. However, Lupin remained held back by the stubborn hope of some incident that would give him the opportunity of acting. The clock struck 12:30. It struck 1. The waiting became terrible, all the more so as an icy mist rose from the valley and Lupin felt the cold penetrate to his very marrow. He heard the trot of a horse in the distance. Sebastiani returning from the station, he thought. But the son who was watching in the torture chamber, having finished his packet of tobacco, opened the door and asked his brothers if they had a pipeful for him. They made some reply, and he went out to go to the lodge. And Lupin was astounded. No sooner was the door closed than Dorbrek, who had been so sound asleep, sat up on his couch, listened, put one foot to the ground, followed by the other, and, standing up, tottering a little, but firmer on his legs than one would have expected, tried his strength. Well, said Lupin, the beggar doesn't take long recovering. He can very well help in his own escape. There's just one point that ruffles me. Will he allow himself to be convinced? Will he consent to go with me? Will he not think that this miraculous assistance which comes to him straight from heaven is a trap laid by the Marquis? But suddenly Lupin remembered the letter which he had made Dorbrek's old cousins write, the letter of recommendation, so to speak, which the elder of the 2 sisters Rouslot had signed with her Christian name, Euphrasie. It was in his pocket. He took it and listened. Not a sound, except the faint noise of Dorbrek's footsteps on the flagstones. Lupin considered that the moment had come. He thrust his arm through the bars and threw the letter in. Dorbrek seemed thunderstruck. The letter had fluttered through the room and lay on the floor, at 3 steps from him. Where did it come from? He raised his head toward the window and tried to pierce the darkness that hid all the upper part of the room from his eyes. Then he looked at the envelope, without yet daring to touch it, as though he dreaded a snare. Then, suddenly, after a glance at the door, he stooped briskly, seized the envelope and opened it. Ah, he said, with a sigh of delight, when he saw the signature. He read the letter half aloud. Rely implicitly on the bearer of this note. He has succeeded in discovering the Marquis' secret, with the money which we gave him, and has contrived a plan of escape. Everything is prepared for your flight. Euphrasie Rouslot. He read the letter again, repeated, Euphrasie, Euphrasie, and raised his head once more. Lupin whispered, it will take me 2 or 3 hours to file through one of the bars. Are Sebastiani and his sons coming back? Yes, they are sure to, replied Dorbrek, in the same low voice, but I expect they will leave me to myself. But they sleep next door? Yes. Won't they hear? No, the door is too thick. Very well. In that case, it will soon be done. I have a rope ladder. Will you be able to climb up alone, without my assistance? I think so. I'll try. It's my wrist that they've broken. Oh, the brutes. I can hardly move my hands and I have very little strength left. But I'll try all the same. Needs must. He stopped, listened and, with his finger to his mouth, whispered, Hush! When Sebastiani and his sons entered the room, Dorbrek, who had hidden the letter and lain down on his bed, pretended to wake with a start. The huntsman brought him a bottle of wine, a glass and some food. How goes it, Monsieur le Depute? He cried. Well, perhaps we did squeeze a little hard. It's very painful, that thumb-screwing. Seems they often did it at the time of the Great Revolution and Bonaparte in the days of the chauffeurs. A pretty invention. Nice and clean, no bloodshed. And it didn't last long either. In 20 minutes, you came out with the missing word. Sebastiani burst out laughing. By the way, Monsieur le Depute, My congratulations. A capital hiding place. Who would ever suspect it? You see, what put us off, Monsieur le Marquis and me, was that name of Marie which you let out at first. You weren't telling a lie, but there you are. You know, the word was only half finished. We had to know the rest. Say what you like, it's amusing. Just think, on your study table. Upon my word, what a joke. The huntsman rose and walked up and down the room, rubbing his hands. Monsieur le Marquis is jolly well pleased, so pleased, in fact, that he himself is coming tomorrow evening to let you out. Yes, he has thought it over. There will be a few formalities. You may have to sign a check or two, stump up, what, and make good Monsieur le Marquis' expense and trouble. But what's that to you? A trifle. Not to mention that, from now on, there will be no more chains, no more straps round your wrists. In short, you will be treated like a king. And I've even been told, look here, to allow you a good bottle of old wine and a flask of brandy. Sebastiani let fly a few more jests, then took the lamp, made a last examination of the room, and said to his sons, let's leave him to sleep. You also, take a rest, all three of you, but sleep with one eye open. One never can tell. They withdrew. Lupin waited a little longer and asked, in a low voice, can I begin? Yes, but be careful. It's not impossible that they may go on a round in an hour or two. Lupin set to work. He had a very powerful file, and the iron of the bars, rusted and gnawed away by time, was, in places, almost reduced to dust. Twice Lupin stopped to listen, with ears pricked up. But it was only the patter of a rat over the rubbish in the upper story, or the flight of some night bird. And he continued his task, encouraged by Dobreck, who stood by the door, ready to warn him at the least alarm. Oof, he said, giving a last stroke of the file. I'm glad that's over, for, on my word, I've been a bit cramped in this cursed tunnel, to say nothing of the cold. He bore with all his strength upon the bar, which he had sawn from below, and succeeded in forcing it down sufficiently for a man's body to slip between the two remaining bars. Next, he had to go back to the end of the embrasure, the wider part, where he had left the rope ladder. After fixing it to the bars, he called Dobreck. Pust. It's all right. Are you ready? Yes, coming. One more second, while I listen. All right. They're asleep. Give me the ladder. Lupin lowered it and asked, must I come down? No. I feel a little weak, but I shall manage. Indeed, he reached the window of the embrasure pretty quickly and crept along the passage in the wake of his rescuer. The open air, however, seemed to make him giddy. Also, to give himself strength, he had drunk half the bottle of wine, and he had a fainting fit that kept him lying on the stones of the embrasure for half an hour. Lupin, losing patience, was fastening him to one end of the rope, of which the other end was knotted round the bars, and was preparing to let him down like a bale of goods, when Dobreck woke up, in better condition. That's over, he said. I feel fit now. Will it take long? Pretty long. We are 150 yards up. How was it that D'Albufex did not foresee that it was possible to escape this way? The cliff is perpendicular, and you were able to... Well, your cousins insisted. And then one has to live, you know, and they were free with their money. The dear, good souls, said Dobreck. Where are they? Down below, in a boat. Is there a river, then? Yes, but we won't talk, if you don't mind. It's dangerous. One word more. Had you been there long when you threw me the letter? No, no. A quarter of an hour or so. I'll tell you all about it. Meanwhile, we must hurry. Lupin went first, after recommending Dobreck to hold tight to the rope and to come down backward. He would give him a hand at the difficult places. It took them over 40 minutes to reach the platform of the ledge formed by the cliff, and Lupin had several times to help his companion, whose wrists, still bruised from the torture, had lost all their strength and suppleness. Over and over again, he groaned. Oh, the swine, they've done for me. The swine. Ah, D'Albufex, I'll make you pay dear for this. SSH, said Lupin. What's the matter? A noise. Up above. Standing motionless on the platform, they listened. Lupin thought of the Sire de Tankerville and the sentry who had killed him with a shot from his harquebus. He shivered, feeling all the anguish of the silence and the darkness. "No," he said, "I was mistaken. Besides, it's absurd. They can't hit us here. Who would hit us? No one. No one. It was a silly notion." He groped about till he found the uprights of the ladder. Then he said, "Here's the ladder. It is fixed in the bed of the river. A friend of mine is looking after it, as well as your cousins." He whistled. "Here I am," he said, in a low voice. "Hold the ladder fast. And, to Dobreck, I'll go first." Dobreck objected. "Perhaps it would be better for me to go down first." "Why?" "I am very tired. You can tie your rope round my waist and hold me. Otherwise, there is a danger that I might." "Yes, you are right," said Lupin. "Come nearer." Dobreck came nearer and knelt down on the rock. Lupin fastened the rope to him and then, stooping over, grasped one of the uprights in both hands to keep the ladder from shaking. "Off you go," he said. At the same moment, he felt a violent pain in the shoulder. "Blast it," he said, sinking to the ground. Dobreck had stabbed him with a knife below the nape of the neck, a little to the right. "You blackguard! You blackguard!" He half saw Dobreck, in the dark, ridding himself of his rope, and heard him whisper, "You're a bit of a fool, you know. You bring me a letter from my Rouslot cousins, in which I recognize the writing of the elder, Adelaide, but which that sly puss of an Adelaide, suspecting something and meaning to put me on my guard, if necessary, took care to sign with the name of the younger sister, Euphrasie Rouslot. You see, I tumbled to it. So, with a little reflection, you are Master Arsène Lupin, are you not? Clarice's protector, Gilbert's savior. Poor Lupin, I fear you're in a bad way. I don't use the knife often, but, when I do, I use it with a vengeance." He bent over the wounded man and felt in his pockets. "Give me your revolver, can't you? You see, your friends will know at once that it is not their governor, and they will try to secure me. And, as I have not much strength left, a bullet or two. Goodbye, Lupin. We shall meet in the next world. Eh? Book me a nice flat, with all the latest conveniences. Goodbye, Lupin, and my best thanks, for really I don't know what I should have done without you. By Jove, d'Albufex was hitting me hard. It'll be a joke to meet the beggar again." Dobreck had completed his preparations. He whistled once more. A reply came from the boat. "Here I am," he said. With a last effort, Lupin put out his arm to stop him, but his hand touched nothing but space. He tried to call out, to warn his accomplices. His voice choked in his throat. He felt a terrible numbness creep over his whole being. His temples buzzed. Suddenly, shouts below. Then a shot. Then another, followed by a triumphant chuckle, and a woman's wail and moans. And, soon after, 2 more shots. Lupin thought of Clarice, wounded, dead perhaps, of Dobreck, fleeing victoriously, of d'Albufex, of the crystal stopper, which one or other of the 2 adversaries would recover unresisted. Then a sudden vision showed him the Sire de Tankerville falling with the woman he loved. Then he murmured, time after time, "Clarice! Clarice! Gilbert!" A great silence overcame him. An infinite peace entered into him. And, without the least revolt, he received the impression that his exhausted body, with nothing now to hold it back, was rolling to the very edge of the rock, toward the abyss. Chapter 9. In the dark. An hotel bedroom at Amiens. Lupin was recovering a little consciousness for the first time. Clarice and the Masher were seated by his bedside. Both were talking, and Lupin listened to them, without opening his eyes. He learned that they had feared for his life, but that all danger was now removed. Next, in the course of the conversation, he caught certain words that revealed to him what had happened in the tragic night at Mortepier, Dobreck's descent. The dismay of the accomplices, when they saw that it was not the governor. Then the short struggle, Clarice flinging herself on Dobreck and receiving a wound in the shoulder. Dobreck leaping to the bank. The Growler firing 2 revolver shots and darting off in pursuit of him. The Masher clambering up the ladder and finding the governor in a swoon. "True as I live," said the Masher. "I can't make out even now how he did not roll over. There was a sort of hollow at that place, but it was a sloping hollow, and, half dead as he was, he must have hung on with his 10 fingers. Crikey, it was time I came." Lupin listened, listened in despair. He collected his strength to grasp and understand the words. But suddenly a terrible sentence was uttered. Clarice, weeping, spoke of the 18 days that had elapsed, 18 more days lost to Gilbert's safety. 18 days! The figure terrified Lupin. He felt that all was over, that he would never be able to recover his strength and resume the struggle, and that Gilbert and Voiture were doomed. His brain slipped away from him. The fever returned and the delirium. And more days came and went. It was perhaps the time of his life of which Lupin speaks with the greatest horror. He retained just enough consciousness and had sufficiently lucid moments to realize the position exactly. But he was not able to coordinate his ideas, to follow a line of argument, nor to instruct or forbid his friends to adopt this or that line of conduct. Often, when he emerged from his torpor, he found his hand in Clarice's and, in that half-slumbering condition in which a fever keeps you, he would address strange words to her, words of love and passion, imploring her and thanking her and blessing her for all the light and joy which he had brought into his darkness. Then, growing calmer and not fully understanding what he had said, he tried to jest. "I have been delirious, have I not? What a heap of nonsense I must have talked." But Lupin felt by Clarice's silence that he could safely talk as much nonsense as ever his fever suggested to him. She did not hear. The care and attention which she lavished on the patient, her devotion, her vigilance, her alarm at the least relapse, all this was meant not for him, but for the possible savior of Gilbert. She anxiously watched the progress of his convalescence. How soon would he be fit to resume the campaign? Was it not madness to linger by his side, when every day carried away a little hope? Lupin never ceased repeating to himself, with the inward belief that, by so doing, he could influence the course of his illness. "I will get well. I will get well." And he lay for days on end without moving, so as not to disturb the dressing of his wound nor increase the excitement of his nerves in the smallest degree. He also strove not to think of Dobreck, but the image of his dire adversary haunted him, and he reconstituted the various phases of the escape, the descent of the cliff. One day, struck by a terrible memory, he exclaimed, the list of the 27. Dobreck must have it by now, or else d'Albufex. It was on the table. Clarice reassured him. "No one can have taken it," she declared. "The Growler was in Paris that same day, with a note from me for Prasville, entreating him to redouble his watch in the Square Lamartine, so that no one should enter, especially d'Albufex. But Dobreck? He is wounded. He cannot have gone home." "Ah, well," he said, "that's all right. But you too were wounded." A mere scratch on the shoulder. Lupin was easier in his mind after these revelations. Nevertheless, he was pursued by stubborn notions which he was unable either to drive from his brain or to put into words. Above all, he thought incessantly of that name of Marie which Dobreck's sufferings had drawn from him. What did the name refer to? Was it the title of one of the books on the shelves, or a part of the title? Would the book in question supply the key to the mystery? Or was it the combination word of a safe? Was it a series of letters written somewhere? On a wall? On a paper? On a wooden panel? On the mount of a drawing? On an inverse? These questions, to which he was unable to find a reply, obsessed and exhausted him. One morning Arsène Lupin woke feeling a great deal better. The wound was closed, the temperature almost normal. The doctor, a personal friend, who came every day from Paris, promised that he might get up 2 days later. And on that day, in the absence of his accomplices and of Mme Murgy, all three of whom had left 2 days before, in quest of information, he had himself moved to the open window. He felt life return to him with the sunlight, with the balmy air that announced the approach of spring. He recovered the concatenation of his ideas, and facts once more took their place in his brain in their logical sequence and in accordance with their relations one to the other. In the evening he received a telegram from Clarice to say that things were going badly and that she, the Growler and the Masher were all staying in Paris. He was much disturbed by this wire and had a less quiet night. What could the news be that had given rise to Clarice's telegram? But, the next day, she arrived in his room looking very pale, her eyes red with weeping, and, utterly worn out, dropped into a chair. "The appeal has been rejected," she stammered. He mastered his emotion and asked, in a voice of surprise, "Were you relying on that?" No, she said, "but, all the same, one hopes in spite of oneself." "Was it rejected yesterday?" A week ago. The masher kept it from me, and I have not dared to read the papers lately. There is always the commutation of sentence, he suggested. The commutation? Do you imagine that they will commute the sentence of Arsène Lupin's accomplices? She ejaculated the words with a violence and a bitterness which he pretended not to notice, and he said, Vorture, perhaps not. But they will take pity on Gilbert, on his youth. They will do nothing of the sort. How do you know? I have seen his counsel. You have seen his counsel. And you told him? I told him that I was Gilbert's mother, and I asked him whether, by proclaiming my son's identity, we could not influence the result, or at least delay it. You would do that, he whispered. You would admit. Gilbert's life comes before everything. What do I care about my name? What do I care about my husband's name? And your little Jacques? He objected. Have you the right to ruin Jacques, to make him the brother of a man condemned to death? She hung her head, and he resumed. What did the counsel say? He said that an act of that sort would not help Gilbert in the remotest degree. And, in spite of all his protests, I could see that, as far as he was concerned, he had no illusions left and that the pardoning commission are bound to find in favor of the execution. The commission, I grant you. But what of the President of the Republic? The President always goes by the advice of the commission. He will not do so this time. And why not? Because we shall bring influence to bear upon him. How? By the conditional surrender of the list of the 27. Have you it? No, but I shall have it. His certainty had not wavered. He made the statement with equal calmness and faith in the infinite power of his will. She had lost some part of her confidence in him, and she shrugged her shoulders lightly. If d'Albufex has not purloined the list, one man alone can exercise any influence. One man alone, Dobreck. She spoke these words in a low and absent voice that made him shudder. Was she still thinking, as he had often seemed to feel, of going back to Dobreck and paying him for Gilbert's life? You have sworn an oath to me, he said. I'm reminding you of it. It was agreed that the struggle with Dobreck should be directed by me and that there would never be a possibility of any arrangement between you and him. She retorted, I don't even know where he is. If I knew, wouldn't you know? It was an evasive answer, but he did not insist, resolving to watch her at the opportune time. And he asked her, for he had not yet been told all the details. Then it's not known what became of Dobreck. No, of course, one of the Growler's bullets struck him. For, next day, we picked up, in a coppice, a handkerchief covered with blood. Also, it seems that a man was seen at Ormail Station, looking very tired and walking with great difficulty. He took a ticket for Paris, stepped into the first train, and that is all. He must be seriously wounded, said Lupin, and he is nursing himself in some safe retreat. Perhaps, also, he considers it wise to lie low for a few weeks and avoid any traps on the part of the police, d'Albufex, you, myself, and all his other enemies. He stopped to think and continued. What has happened at Mortepier since Dobreck's escape? Has there been no talk in the neighborhood? No, the rope was removed before daybreak, which proves that Sebastiani or his sons discovered Dobreck's flight on the same night. Sebastiani was away the whole of the next day. Yes, he will have informed the Marquis. And where is the Marquis himself? At home. And, from what the Growler has heard, there is nothing suspicious there either. Are they certain that he has not been inside Dobreck's house? As certain as they can be. Nor Dobreck. Nor Dobreck. Have you seen Prasville? Prasville is away on leave. But Chief Inspector Blanchon, who has charge of the case, and the detectives who are guarding the house declare that, in accordance with Prasville's instructions, their watch is not relaxed for a moment, even at night, that one of them, turn and turn about, is always on duty in the study, and that no one, therefore, can have gone in. So, on principle, Arsène Lupin concluded, the crystal stopper must still be in Dobreck's study. If it was there before Dobreck's disappearance, it should be there now. And on the study table. On the study table? Why do you say that? Because I know, said Lupin, who had not forgotten Sebastiani's words. But you don't know the article in which the stopper is hidden? No, but a study table, a writing desk, is a limited space. One can explore it in 20 minutes. One could demolish it, if necessary, in 10. The conversation had tired Arsène Lupin a little. As he did not wish to commit the least imprudence, he said to Clarisse, Listen, I will ask you to give me 2 or 3 days more. This is Monday, the 4th of March. On Wednesday or Thursday, at latest, I shall be up and about. And you can be sure that we shall succeed. And, in the meantime, go back to Paris. Take rooms, with the Growler and the Masher, in the Hotel Franklin, near the Trocadero, and keep a watch on Dorbreck's house. You are free to go in and out as you please. Stimulate the zeal of the detectives on duty. Suppose Dorbreck returns. If he returns, that will be so much the better. We shall have him. And, if he only passes, in that case, the Growler and the Masher must follow him. And if they lose sight of him, Lupin did not reply. No one felt more than he how fatal it was to remain inactive in a hotel bedroom and how useful his presence would have been on the battlefield. Perhaps even this vague idea had already prolonged his illness beyond the ordinary limits. He murmured, "Go now, please." There was a constraint between them which increased as the awful day drew nigh. In her injustice, forgetting or wishing to forget that it was she who had forced her son into the Enghien enterprise, Mme Murgy did not forget that the law was pursuing Gilbert with such rigor not so much because he was a criminal as because he was an accomplice of Arsène Lupin's. And then, notwithstanding all his efforts, notwithstanding his prodigious expenditure of energy, what result had Lupin achieved, when all was said? How far had his intervention benefited Gilbert? After a pause, she rose and left him alone. The next day he was feeling rather low. But on the day after, the Wednesday, when his doctor wanted him to keep quiet until the end of the week, he said, "If not, what have I to fear? A return of the fever. Nothing worse. No, the wound is pretty well healed. Then I don't care. I'll go back with you in your car. We shall be in Paris by midday." What decided Lupin to start at once was, first, a letter in which Clarice told him that she had found Dorbreck's traces, and, also, a telegram, published in the Amiens papers, which stated that the Marquis d'Albufex had been arrested for his complicity in the affair of the canal. Dorbreck was taking his revenge. Now the fact that Dorbreck was taking his revenge proved that the Marquis had not been able to prevent that revenge by seizing the document which was on the writing desk in the study. It proved that Chief Inspector Blanchan and the detectives had kept a good watch. It proved that the crystal stopper was still in the Square Lamartine. It was still there, and this showed either that Dorbreck had not ventured to go home, or else that his state of health hindered him from doing so, or else again that he had sufficient confidence in the hiding place not to trouble to put himself out. In any case, there was no doubt as to the course to be pursued. Lupin must act, and he must act smartly. He must forestall Dorbreck and get hold of the crystal stopper. When they had crossed the Bois de Boulogne and were nearing the Square Lamartine, Lupin took leave of the doctor and stopped the car. The Growler and the Masher, to whom he had wired, met him. "Where's Mme Murgy?" he asked. "She has not been back since yesterday. She sent us an express message to say that she saw Dorbreck leaving his cousin's place and getting into a cab. She knows the number of the cab and will keep us informed. Nothing further?" "Nothing further. No other news?" "Yes. The Paris Midi says that d'Albufex opened his veins last night with a piece of broken glass in his cell at the Santé. He seems to have left a long letter behind him, confessing his fault, but accusing Dorbreck of his death and exposing the part played by Dorbreck in the canal affair." "Is that all?" "No. The same paper stated that it has reason to believe that the Pardoning Commission, after examining the record, has rejected Vautrin and Gilbert's petition and that their counsel will probably be received in audience by the President on Friday." Lupin gave a shudder. "They are losing no time," he said. "I can see that Dorbreck, on the very first day, put the screw on the old judicial machine. One short week more, and the knife falls. My poor Gilbert. If, on Friday next, the papers which your counsel submits to the President of the Republic do not contain the conditional offer of the list of the 27, then, my poor Gilbert, you are done for. Come, Governor, are you losing courage?" "I? Rot. I shall have the crystal stopper in an hour. In 2 hours, I shall see Gilbert's counsel, and the nightmare will be over. Well done, Governor. That's like your old self. Shall we wait for you here?" "No. Go back to your hotel. I'll join you later." They parted. Lupin walked straight to the house and rang the bell. A detective opened the door and recognized him. "M. Nicole, I believe." "Yes," he said. "Is Chief Inspector Blanchan here?" "He is. Can I speak to him?" The man took him to the study, where Chief Inspector Blanchan welcomed him with obvious pleasure. Well, Chief Inspector, one would say there was something new. Nicole, my orders are to place myself entirely at your disposal. And I may say that I am very glad to see you today. Why so? Because there is something new. Something serious. Something very serious. Quick, speak. Dobreck has returned. Eh, what? Exclaimed Lupin, with a start. Dobreck returned? Is he here? No, he has gone. And did he come in here? In the study? Yes, this morning. And you did not prevent him? What right had I? And you left him alone? By his positive orders. Yes, we left him alone. Lupin felt himself turn pale. Dobreck had come back to fetch the crystal stopper. He was silent for some time and repeated to himself. He came back to fetch it. He was afraid that it would be found, and he has taken it. Of course, it was inevitable. With d'Albufex arrested, with d'Albufex accused and accusing him, Dobreck was bound to defend himself. It's a difficult game for him. After months and months of mystery, the public is at last learning that the infernal being who contrived the whole tragedy of the 27 and who ruins and kills his adversaries is he, Dobreck. What would become of him if, by a miracle, his talisman did not protect him? He has taken it back, and, trying to make his voice sound firm, he asked, "Did he stay long? 20 seconds, perhaps." "What? 20 seconds? No longer. No longer. What time was it?" 10 o'clock. Could he have known of the Marquis d'Albufex suicide by then? "Yes. I saw the special edition of the Paris Midi in his pocket." That's it, said Lupin. And he asked, "Did M. Prasville give you no special instructions in case Dobreck should return?" "No. So, in M. Prasville's absence, I telephoned to the police office and I am waiting." The disappearance of Dobreck the deputy caused a great stir, as you know, and our presence here has a reason, in the eyes of the public, as long as that disappearance continues. But, now that Dobreck has returned, now that we have proofs that he is neither under restraint nor dead, how can we stay in the house? "It doesn't matter," said Lupin, absently. "It doesn't matter whether the house is guarded or not. Dobreck has been. Therefore the crystal stopper is no longer here." He had not finished the sentence, when a question quite naturally forced itself upon his mind. If the crystal stopper was no longer there, would this not be obvious from some material sign? Had the removal of that object, doubtless contained within another object, left no trace, no void? It was easy to ascertain. Lupin had simply to examine the writing desk, for he knew, from Sebastiani's chaff, that this was the spot of the hiding place. And the hiding place could not be a complicated one, seeing that Dobreck had not remained in the study for more than 20 seconds, just long enough, so to speak, to walk in and walk out again. Lupin looked, and the result was immediate. His memory had so faithfully recorded the picture of the desk, with all the articles lying on it, that the absence of one of them struck him instantaneously, as though that article and that alone were the characteristic sign which distinguished this particular writing table from every other table in the world. "Oh," he thought, quivering with delight. "Everything fits in. Everything. Down to that half-word which the torture drew from Dobreck in the tower at Mortepere. The riddle is solved. There need be no more hesitation, no more groping in the dark. The end is in sight." And, without answering the inspector's questions, he thought of the simplicity of the hiding place and remembered Edgar Allan Poe's wonderful story in which the stolen letter, so eagerly sought for, is, in a manner of speaking, displayed to all eyes. People do not suspect what does not appear to be hidden. "Well, well," said Lupin, as he went out, greatly excited by his discovery. "I seem doomed, in this confounded adventure, to knock up against disappointments to the finish. Everything that I build crumbles to pieces at once. Every victory ends in disaster." Nevertheless, he did not allow himself to be cast down. On the one hand, he now knew where Dobreck the deputy hid the crystal stopper. On the other hand, he would soon learn from Clarice Murgy where Dobreck himself was lurking. The rest, to him, would be child's play. The Growler and the Masher were waiting for him in the drawing-room of the Hotel Franklin, a small family hotel near the Trocadero. Mme Murgy had not yet written to him. "Oh," he said, "I can trust her. She will hang on to Dobreck until she is certain." However, toward the end of the afternoon, he began to grow impatient and anxious. He was fighting one of those battles, the last, he hoped, in which the least delay might jeopardize everything. If Dobrecht threw Murgy off the scent, how was he to be caught again? They no longer had weeks or days, but only a few hours, a terribly limited number of hours, in which to repair any mistakes that they might commit. He saw the proprietor of the hotel and asked him, "Are you sure that there is no express letter for my two friends?" "Quite sure, sir." "Nor for me, Nichols?" "No, sir." "That's curious," said Lupin. "We were certain that we should hear from enemy Audrey." Audrey was the name under which Clarice was staying at the hotel. "But the lady has been," said the proprietor. "What's that?" "She came some time ago and, as the gentlemen were not there, left a letter in her room." "Didn't the porter tell you?" Lupin and his friends hurried upstairs. There was a letter on the table. "Hello," said Lupin. "It's been opened." "How is that? And why has it been cut about with scissors?" The letter contained the following lines. Dobrecht has spent the week at the Hotel Central. This morning he had his luggage taken to the Gare de, and telephoned to reserve a berth in the sleeping car. I do not know when the train starts, but I shall be at the station all the afternoon. Come as soon as you can, all three of you. We will arrange to kidnap him." "What next?" said the masher. "At which station? And where's the sleeping car for?" "She has cut out just the words we wanted." "Yes," said the growler. "Two snips with the scissors in each place, and the words which we most want are gone. Whoever saw such a thing? Has Murgy lost her head?" Lupin did not move. A rush of blood was beating at his temples with such violence that he glued his fist to them and pressed with all his might. His fever returned, burning and riotous, and his will, incensed to the verge of physical suffering, concentrated itself upon that stealthy enemy, which must be controlled then and there, if he himself did not wish to be irretrievably beaten. He muttered, very calmly, "Dobrecht has been here. Dobrecht! We can't suppose that Murgy has been amusing herself by cutting out those two words. Dobrecht has been here." Murgy thought that she was watching him. He was watching her instead. How? Doubtless through that hall porter who did not tell us that Murgy had been to the hotel, but who must have told Dobrecht. He came. He read the letter, and, by way of getting at us, he contented himself with cutting out the essential words. "We can find out. We can ask. What's the good? What's the use of finding out how he came, when we know that he did come?" He examined the letter for some time, turned it over and over, then stood up and said, "Come along." "Where to?" "Gare de Lyon." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure of nothing with Dobrecht. But, as we have to choose, according to the contents of the letter, between the Gare de l'Est and the Gare de Lyon, I am presuming that his business, his pleasure, and his health are more likely to take Dobrecht in the direction of Marseilles and the Riviera than to the Gare de l'Est. It was past 7 when Lupin and his companions left the Hotel Franklin. A motorcar took them across Paris at full speed, but they soon saw that Clarice Murgy was not outside the station, nor in the waiting rooms, nor on any of the platforms. "Still," muttered Lupin, whose agitation grew as the obstacles increased. "Still, if Dobrecht booked a berth in a sleeping car, it can only have been in an evening train. And it is barely 7:30. A train was starting, the night express. They had time to rush along the corridor. Nobody, neither Murgy nor Dobrecht. But, as they were all three going, a porter accosted them near the refreshment room. "Is one of you gentlemen looking for a lady?" Yes. "I am," said Lupin. "Quick! What is it?" "Oh, it's you, sir. The lady told me there might be 3 of you or 2 of you. And I didn't know. But, in heaven's name, speak, man." "What lady?" "The lady who spent the whole day on the pavement, with the luggage, waiting." "Well, out with it. Has she taken a train?" "Yes, the train deluxe, at 6:30. She made up her mind at the last moment, she told me to say. And I was also to say that the gentleman was in the same train and that they were going to Monte Carlo." "Damn it," muttered Lupin. "We ought to have taken the express just now. There's nothing left but the evening trains, and they crawl. We've lost over 3 hours." The wait seemed interminable. They booked their seats. They telephoned to the proprietor of the Hotel Franklin to send on their letters to Monte Carlo. They dined. They read the papers. At last, at 9:30, the train started. And so, by a really tragic series of circumstances, at the most critical moment of the contest, Lupin was turning his back on the battlefield and going away, at haphazard, to seek, he knew not where, and beat, he knew not how, the most formidable and elusive enemy that he had ever fought. And this was happening 4 days, 5 days at most, before the inevitable execution of Gilbert and Vautrin. It was a bad and painful night for Lupin. The more he studied the situation, the more terrible it appeared to him. On every side he was faced with uncertainty, darkness, confusion, helplessness. True, he knew the secret of the crystal stopper. But how was he to know that Dobreck would not change or had not already changed his tactics? How was he to know that the list of the 27 was still inside that crystal stopper, or that the crystal stopper was still inside the object where Dobreck had first hidden it? And there was a further serious reason for alarm in the fact that Clarice Murgy thought that she was shadowing and watching Dobreck at a time when, on the contrary, Dobreck was watching her, having her shadowed and dragging her, with diabolical cleverness, toward the places selected by himself, far from all help or hope of help. Oh, Dobreck's game was clear as daylight. Did not Lupin know the unhappy woman's hesitations? Did he not know, and the Growler and the Masher confirmed it most positively, that Clarice looked upon the infamous bargain planned by Dobreck in the light of a possible, an acceptable thing? In that case, how could he, Lupin, succeed? The logic of events, so powerfully molded by Dobreck, led to a fatal result. The mother must sacrifice herself and, to save her son, throw her scruples, her repugnance, her very honor, to the winds. Oh, you scoundrel, snarled Lupin, in a fit of rage. If I get hold of you, I'll make you dance to a pretty tune. I wouldn't be in your shoes for a great deal. When that happens. They reached Monte Carlo at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Lupin was at once disappointed not to see Clarice on the platform at the station. He waited. No messenger came up to him. He asked the porters and ticket collectors if they had noticed, among the crowd, 2 travelers answering to the description of Dobreck and Clarice. They had not. He had, therefore, to set to work and hunt through all the hotels and lodging houses in the Principality. Oh, the time wasted. By the following evening, Lupin knew, beyond a doubt, that Dobreck and Clarice were not at Monte Carlo, nor at Monaco, nor at the Cap d'Ale, nor at La Turbie, nor at Cap Martin. Where can they be then? He wondered, trembling with rage. At last, on the Saturday, he received, at the Poste Restante, a telegram which had been readdressed from the Hotel Franklin and which said, "He got out at Cannes and is going on to San Remo, Hotel Palace des Ambassadeurs. Clarice." The telegram was dated the day before. "Hang it," exclaimed Lupin. "They passed through Monte Carlo. One of us ought to have remained at the station. I did think of it. But, in the midst of all that bustle, Lupin and his friends took the first train for Italy. They crossed the frontier at 12 o'clock. The train entered the station at San Remo at 12:40. They at once saw an hotel porter, with Ambassador's Palace on his braided cap, who seemed to be looking for someone among the arrivals. Lupin went up to him. "Are you looking for M. Nicole?" "Yes, M. Nicole and 2 gentlemen." "From a lady?" "Yes, Amy Murgy." "Is she staying at your hotel?" "No, she did not get out. She beckoned to me, described you 3 gentlemen and told me to say that she was going on to Genoa, to the Hotel Continental." "Was she by herself?" "Yes." Lupin tipped the man, dismissed him and turned to his friends. "This is Saturday. If the execution takes place on Monday, there's nothing to be done. But Monday is not a likely day. What I have to do is to lay hands on Dobreck tonight and to be in Paris on Monday, with the document. It's our last chance. Let's take it." The Growler went to the booking office and returned with 3 tickets for Genoa. The engine whistled. Lupin had a last hesitation. "No, really, it's too childish. What are we doing? We ought to be in Paris, not here. Just think." He was on the point of opening the door and jumping out on the permanent way. But his companions held him back. The train started. He sat down again, and they continued their mad pursuit, traveling at random, toward the unknown. And this happened 2 days before the inevitable execution of Gilbert and Vautrin. Chapter 10. Extra DIY. On one of the hills that girdle Nice with the finest scenery in the world, between the Vallon de Saint-Sylvestre and the Vallon de l'Arme Antigua, stands a huge hotel which overlooks the town and the wonderful Bay des Anges. A crowd flocks to it from all parts, forming a medley of every class and nation. On the evening of the same Saturday when Lupin, the Growler, and the Masher were plunging into Italy, Clarice Murgy entered this hotel, asked for a bedroom facing south and selected number 130, on the second floor, a room which had been vacant since that morning. The room was separated from number 129 by 2 partition doors. As soon as she was alone, Clarice pulled back the curtain that concealed the first door, noiselessly drew the bolt and put her ear to the second door. He is here, she thought. He is dressing to go to the club, as he did yesterday. When her neighbor had gone, she went into the passage and, availing herself of a moment when there was no one in sight, walked up to the door of number 129. The door was locked. She waited all the evening for her neighbor's return and did not go to bed until 2 o'clock. On Sunday morning, she resumed her watch. The neighbor went out at 11. This time he left the key in the door. Hurriedly turning the key, Clarice entered boldly, went to the partition door, raised the curtain, drew the bolt and found herself in her own room. In a few minutes, she heard 2 chambermaids doing the room in number 129. She waited until they were gone. Then, feeling sure that she would not be disturbed, she once more slipped into the other room. Her excitement made her lean against a chair. After days and nights of stubborn pursuit, after alternate hopes and disappointments, she had at last succeeded in entering a room occupied by Dobreck. She could look about at her ease, and, if she did not discover the crystal stopper, she could at least hide in the space between the partition doors, behind the hanging, see Dobreck, spy upon his movements and surprise his secret. She looked around her. A traveling bag at once caught her attention. She managed to open it, but her search was useless. She ransacked the trays of a trunk and the compartments of a portmanteau. She searched the wardrobe, the writing table, the chest of drawers, the bathroom, all the tables, all the furniture. She found nothing. She gave a start when she saw a scrap of paper on the balcony, lying as though flung there by accident. Can it be a trick of Dobreck's? She thought, out loud. Can that scrap of paper contain? No, said a voice behind her, as she put her hand on the latch. She turned and saw Dobreck. She felt neither astonishment nor alarm, nor even any embarrassment at finding herself face to face with him. She had suffered too deeply for months to trouble about what Dobreck could think of her or say, at catching her in the act of spying. She sat down wearily. He grinned. No, you're out of it, dear friend. As the children say, you're not burning at all. Oh, not a bit of it. And it's so easy. Shall I help you? It's next to you, dear friend, on that little table. And yet, by Jove, there's not much on that little table. Something to read, something to write with, something to smoke, something to eat, and that's all. Will you have one of these candied fruits? Or perhaps you would rather wait for the more substantial meal which I have ordered. Clarice made no reply. She did not even seem to listen to what he was saying, as though she expected other words, more serious words, which he could not fail to utter. He cleared the table of all the things that lay upon it and put them on the mantelpiece. Then he rang the bell. A head waiter appeared. Dobreck asked, Is the lunch which I ordered ready? Yes, sir. It's for 2, isn't it? Yes, sir. And the champagne? Yes, sir. Extra dry? Yes, sir. Another waiter brought a tray and laid 2 covers on the table. A cold lunch, some fruit, and a bottle of champagne in an ice pail. Then the 2 waiters withdrew. Sit down, dear lady. As you see, I was thinking of you and your cover is laid. And, without seeming to observe that Clarice was not at all prepared to do honor to his invitation, he sat down, began to eat and continued. Yes, upon my word, I hoped that you would end by consenting to this little private meeting. During the past week, while you were keeping so assiduous a watch upon me, I did nothing but say to myself, I wonder which she prefers, sweet champagne, dry champagne, or extra dry. I was really puzzled, especially after our departure from Paris. I had lost your tracks. That is to say, I feared that you had lost mine and abandoned the pursuit which was so gratifying to me. When I went for a walk, I missed your beautiful dark eyes, gleaming with hatred under your hair just touched with gray. But, this morning, I understood. The room next to mine was empty at last, and my friend Clarice was able to take up her quarters, so to speak, by my bedside. From that moment I was reassured. I felt certain that, on coming back, instead of lunching in the restaurant as usual, I should find you arranging my things to your convenience and suiting your own taste. That was why I ordered 2 covers. One for your humble servant, the other for his fair friend. She was listening to him now and in the greatest terror. So Dobrecht knew that he was spied upon. For a whole week he had seen through her and all her schemes. In a low voice, anxious-eyed, she asked, "You did it on purpose, did you not? You only went away to drag me with you." "Yes," he said. "But why? Why?" "Do you mean to say that you don't know?" retorted Dobrecht, laughing with a little cluck of delight. She half rose from her chair and, bending toward him, thought, as she thought each time, of the murder which she could commit, of the murder which she would commit. One revolver shot and the odious brute was done for. Slowly her hand glided to the weapon concealed in her bodice. Dobrecht said, "1 second, dear friend. You can shoot presently, but I beg you first to read this wire which I have just received." She hesitated, not knowing what trap he was laying for her. But he went on, as he produced a telegram. "It's about your son, Gilbert?" she asked, greatly concerned. "Yes, Gilbert." "Here, read it." She gave a yell of dismay. She had read, "Execution on Tuesday morning," and she at once flung herself on Dobrecht, crying, "It's not true. It's a lie, to madden me." "Oh, I know you. You are capable of anything. Confess. It won't be on Tuesday, will it? In 2 days. No, no. I tell you, we have 4 days yet, 5 days, in which to save him. Confess it, confess it." She had no strength left, exhausted by this fit of rebellion, and her voice uttered none but inarticulate sounds. He looked at her for a moment, then poured himself out a glass of champagne and drank it down at a gulp. He took a few steps up and down the room, came back to her and said, "Listen to me, darling." The insult made her quiver with an unexpected energy. She drew herself up and, panting with indignation, said, I forbid you to speak to me like that. I will not accept such an outrage." "You wretch!" He shrugged his shoulders and resumed, "Pa, I see you're not quite alive to the position. That comes, of course, because you still hope for assistance in some quarter. Prasville, perhaps? The excellent Prasville, whose right hand you are. My dear friend, a forlorn hope. You must know that Prasville is mixed up in the canal affair. Not directly. That is to say, his name is not on the list of the 27, but it is there under the name of one of his friends, an ex-deputy called Vorenglade, Stanislas Vorenglade, his man of straw, apparently, a penniless individual whom I left alone and rightly. I knew nothing of all that until this morning, when, lo and behold, I received a letter informing me of the existence of a bundle of documents which prove the complicity of our one and only Prasville. And who is my informant? Vorenglade himself. Vorenglade, who, tired of living in poverty, wants to extort money from Prasville, at the risk of being arrested, and who will be delighted to come to terms with me. And Prasville will get the sack. Oh, what a lark! I swear to you that he will get the sack, the villain. By Jove, but he's annoyed me long enough. Prasville, old boy, you've deserved it." He rubbed his hands together, reveling in his coming revenge. And he continued, "You see, my dear Clarice, there's nothing to be done in that direction. What then? What straw will you cling to? Why, I was forgetting Arsène Lupin, Mr. Growler, Mr. Masher. Pa, you'll admit that those gentlemen have not shone and that all their feats of prowess have not prevented me from going my own little way. It was bound to be. Those fellows imagine that there's no one to equal them. When they meet an adversary like myself, one who is not to be bounced, it upsets them and they make blunder after blunder, while still believing that they are hoodwinking him like mad. Schoolboys, that's what they are. However, as you seem to have some illusions left about the aforesaid Lupin, as you are counting on that poor devil to crush me and to work a miracle in favor of your innocent Gilbert, come, let's dispel that illusion. Oh, Lupin, Lord above, she believes in Lupin. She places her last hopes in Lupin. Lupin, just wait till I prick you, my illustrious windbag." He took up the receiver of the telephone which communicated with the hall of the hotel and said, "I'm number 129, mademoiselle. Would you kindly ask the person sitting opposite your office to come up to me?" "Huh. Yes, mademoiselle, the gentleman in a grey felt hat. He knows. Thank you, mademoiselle." Hanging up the receiver, He turned to Clarice. Don't be afraid. The man is discretion itself. Besides, it's the motto of his trade. Discretion and dispatch. As a retired detective, he has done me a number of services, including that of following you while you were following me. Since our arrival in the South, he has been less busy with you, but that was because he was more busy elsewhere. Come in, Jacob. He himself opened the door, and a short, thin man, with a red mustache, entered the room. Please tell this lady, Jacob, in a few brief words, what you have done since Wednesday evening, when, after letting her get into the train de luxe which was taking me from the Gare de Lyon to the South, you yourself remained on the platform at the station. Of course, I am not asking how you spent your time, except in so far as concerns the lady and the business with which I entrusted you. Jacob dived into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced a little notebook of which he turned over the pages and read them aloud in the voice of a man reading a report. Wednesday evening, 8.15. Gare de Lyon. Wait for two gents, Growler and Masher. They come with another whom I don't know yet, but who can only be M. Nicole. Give a porter 10 francs for the loan of his cap and blouse. Accost the gents and tell them, from a lady, that they were gone to Monte Carlo. Next, telephone to the porter at the Hotel Franklin. All telegrams sent to his boss and dispatched by said boss will be read by said hotel porter and, if necessary, intercepted. Thursday. Monte Carlo. The three gents search the hotels. Friday. Flying visits to La Turbie, the Cap d'Ale, Cap Martin. M. Dorbreck rings me up. Thinks it wiser to send the gents to Italy. Make the porter of the Hotel Franklin send them a telegram appointing a meeting at San Remo. Saturday. San Remo. Station platform. Give the porter of the Ambassador's Palace 10 francs for the loan of his cap. The three gents arrive. They speak to me. Explain to them that a lady traveler, MME Murgy, is going on to Genoa, to the Hotel Continental. The gents hesitate. M. Nicole wants to get out. The others hold him back. The train starts. Good luck, gents. An hour later, I take the train for France and get out at Nice to await fresh orders. Jacob closed his notebook and concluded. That's all. Today's doings will be entered this evening. You can enter them now, M. Jacob. 12 noon. M. Dorbreck sends me to the Wagon Lys Company. I booked 2 berths in the Paris sleeping car, by the 2.48 train, and send them to M. Dorbreck by express messenger. Then I take the 12.58 train for Vintimille, the frontier station, where I spend the day on the platform watching all the travelers who come to France. Should Messrs. Nicole, Growler, and Masher take it into their heads to leave Italy and return to Paris by way of Nice, my instructions are to telegraph to the headquarters of police that Master Arsène Lupin and 2 of his accomplices are in train number so-and-so. While speaking, Dorbreck led Jacob to the door. He closed it after him, turned the key, pushed the bolt and, going up to Clarice, said, "And now, darling, listen to me." This time, she uttered no protest. What could she do against such an enemy, so powerful, so resourceful, who provided for everything, down to the minutest details, and who toyed with his adversaries in such an airy fashion? Even if she had hoped till then for Lupin's interference, how could she do so now, when he was wandering through Italy in pursuit of a shadow? She understood at last why 3 telegrams which she had sent to the Hotel Franklin had remained unanswered. Dorbreck was there, lurking in the dark, watching, establishing a void around her, separating her from her comrades in the fight, bringing her gradually, a beaten prisoner, within the 4 walls of that room. She felt her weakness. She was at the monster's mercy. She must be silent and resigned. He repeated, with an evil delight, "Listen to me, darling. Listen to the irrevocable words which I am about to speak. Listen to them well. It is now 12 o'clock. The last train starts at 2.48. You understand, the last train that can bring me to Paris tomorrow, Monday, in time to save your son. The evening trains would arrive too late. The trains de luxe are full up. Therefore I shall have to start at 2.48. Am I to start? Yes. Our berths are booked. Will you come with me? Yes. You know my conditions for interfering. Yes. Do you accept them? Yes. You will marry me? Yes. Oh, those horrible answers. The unhappy woman gave them in a sort of awful torpor, refusing even to understand what she was promising. Let him start first, Let him snatch Gilbert from the engine of death whose vision haunted her day and night. And then, let what must come come. He burst out laughing. Oh, you rogue, it's easily said. You're ready to pledge yourself to anything, eh? The great thing is to save Gilbert, isn't it? Afterward, when that noodle of a Dobreck comes with his engagement ring, not a bit of it. Nothing doing. We'll laugh in his face. No, enough of empty words. I don't want promises that won't be kept. I want facts, immediate facts. He came and sat close beside her and stated, plainly, this is what I propose, what must be, what shall be. I will ask, or rather I will demand, not Gilbert's pardon, to begin with, but a reprieve, a postponement of the execution, a postponement of 3 or 4 weeks. They will invent a pretext of some sort. That's not my affair. And, when Mme Murgy has become Mme Dobreck, then and not till then will I ask for his pardon, that is to say, the commutation of his sentence. And make yourself quite easy. They'll grant it. I accept, she stammered. He laughed once more. Yes, you accept, because that will happen in a month's time, and meanwhile you reckon on finding some trick, an assistance of some kind or another. Arsène Lupin. I swear it on the head of my son. The head of your son. Why, my poor pet, you would sell yourself to the devil to save it from falling. Oh, yes, she whispered, shuddering. I would gladly sell my soul. He sidled up against her and, in a low voice, Clarice, it's not your soul I ask for. It's something else. For more than 20 years my life has spun around that longing. You are the only woman I have ever loved. Loathe me, hate me, I don't care, but do not spurn me. Am I to wait? To wait another month? No, Clarice, I have waited too many years already. He ventured to touch her hand. Clarice shrank back with such disgust that he was seized with fury and cried, Oh, I swear to heaven, my beauty, the executioner won't stand on such ceremony when he catches hold of your son. And you give yourself airs. Why, think, it'll happen in 40 hours. 40 hours, no more, and you hesitate, and you have scruples, when your son's life is at stake. Come, no whimpering, no silly sentimentality. Look things in the face. By your own oath, you are my wife, you are my bride from this moment. Clarice, give me your lips. Half fainting, she had hardly the strength to put out her arm and push him away. And, with a cynicism in which all his abominable nature stood revealed, Dobreck, mingling words of cruelty and words of passion, continued, Save your son. Think of the last morning, the preparations for the scaffold, when they snip away his shirt and cut his hair. Clarice, I will save him. Be sure of it. All my life shall be yours. Clarice. She no longer resisted. It was over. The loathsome brute's lips were about to touch hers, and it had to be, and nothing could prevent it. It was her duty to obey the decree of fate. She had long known it. She understood it. And, closing her eyes, so as not to see the foul face that was slowly raised to hers, she repeated to herself, My son, my poor son. A few seconds passed, 10, 20 perhaps. Dobreck did not move. Dobreck did not speak. And she was astounded at that great silence and that sudden quiet. Did the monster, at the last moment, feel a scruple of remorse? She raised her eyelids. The sight which she beheld struck her with stupefaction. Instead of the grinning features which she expected to see, she saw a motionless, unrecognizable face, contorted by an expression of unspeakable terror, and the eyes, invisible under the double impediment of the spectacles, seemed to be staring above her head, above the chair in which she lay prostrate. Clarice turned her face. 2 revolver barrels, pointed at Dobreck, showed on the right, a little above the chair. She saw only that, those 2 huge, formidable revolvers, gripped in 2 clenched hands. She saw only that and also Dobreck's face, which fear was discoloring little by little, until it turned livid. And, almost at the same time, someone slipped behind Dobreck, sprang up fiercely, flung one of his arms round Dobreck's neck, threw him to the ground with incredible violence and applied a pad of cotton wool to his face. A sudden smell of chloroform filled the room. Clarice had recognized Nicole. "Come along, Growler," he cried. "Come along, Masha. Drop your shooters. I got him. Here's a limp rack. Tie him up." Dobreck, in fact, was bending in two and falling on his knees like a disjointed doll. Under the action of the chloroform, the fearsome brute sank into impotence, became harmless and grotesque. The Growler and the Masher rolled him in one of the blankets of the bed and tied him up securely. "That's it! That's it!" shouted Lupin, leaping to his feet. And, in a sudden reaction of mad delight, he began to dance a wild jig in the middle of the room, a jig mingled with bits of can-can and the contortions of the cakewalk and the whirls of a dancing dervish and the acrobatic movements of a clown and the lurching steps of a drunken man. And he announced, as though they were the numbers in a music hall performance, "The prisoner's dance, the captive's hornpipe, a fantasia on the corpse of a representative of the people, the chloroform polka, the two-step of the conquered goggles, all, the blackmailer's fandango, hoot, hoot, the McDorbreck's fling, the turkey trot, and the bunny hug, and the grizzly bear, the Tyrolean dance, tra-la-liety, Allen's enfants de la partie, zing, boom, boom, zing, boom, boom." All his street Arab nature, all his instincts of gaiety, so long suppressed by his constant anxiety and disappointment, came out and betrayed themselves in roars of laughter, bursts of animal spirits, and a picturesque need of childlike exuberance and riot. He gave a last high kick, turned a series of cartwheels round the room, and ended by standing with his hands on his hips and one foot on Dobreck's lifeless body. "An allegorical tableau," he announced. "The angel of virtue destroying the hydra of vice." And the humor of the scene was twice as great because Lupin was appearing under the aspect of Nicole, in the clothes and figure of that wizened, awkward, nervous private tutor. A sad smile flickered across Merge's face, her first smile for many a long month. But, at once returning to the reality of things, she besought him, "Please, please, think of Gilbert." He ran up to her, caught her in his arms and, obeying a spontaneous impulse, so frank that she could but laugh at it, gave her a resounding kiss on either cheek. "There, lady, that's the kiss of a decent man. Instead of Dobreck, it's I kissing you. Another word and I'll do it again, and I'll call you darling next. Be angry with me, if you dare. Oh, how happy I am." He knelt before her on one knee, and, respectfully, "I beg your pardon, madam. The fit is over." And, getting up again, resuming his whimsical manner, he continued, while Clarice wondered what he was driving at. "What's the next article, madam? Your son's pardon, perhaps?" "Certainly, madam. I have the honor to grant you the pardon of your son, the commutation of his sentence to penal servitude for life, and, to wind up with, his early escape." "It's settled, eh, Growler?" "Settled. Masha, what? You'll both go with the boy to New Caledonia and arrange for everything." "Oh, my dear Dobreck, we owe you a great debt, but I'm not forgetting you, believe me. What would you like? A last pipe? Coming, coming." He took one of the pipes from the mantelpiece, stooped over the prisoner, shifted his pad and thrust the amber mouthpiece between his teeth. "Draw, old chap, draw. Lord, how funny you look, with your plug over your nose and your cutty in your mouth. Come, puff away. By Jove, I forgot to fill your pipe. Where's your tobacco? Your favorite Maryland? Oh, here we are." He took from the chimney an unopened yellow packet and tore off the government band. "His lordship's tobacco. Ladies and gentlemen, keep your eyes on me. This is a great moment. I am about to fill his lordship's pipe. By Jupiter, what an honor. Observe my movements. You see, I have nothing in my hands, nothing up my sleeves." He turned back his cuffs and stuck out his elbows. Then he opened the packet and inserted his thumb and forefinger, slowly, gingerly, like a conjurer performing a sleight-of-hand trick before a puzzled audience, and, beaming all over his face, extracted from the tobacco a glittering object which he held out before the spectators. Clarice uttered a cry. It was the crystal stopper. She rushed at Lupin and snatched it from him. "That's it. That's the one," she exclaimed, feverishly. "There's no scratch on the stem. And look at this line running down the middle, where the gilt finishes. That's it. It unscrews. Oh, dear, my strength's going. She trembled so violently that Lupin took back the stopper and unscrewed it himself. The inside of the knob was hollow, and in the hollow space was a piece of paper rolled into a tiny pellet. "The foreign post paper," he whispered, himself greatly excited, with quivering hands. There was a long silence. All four felt as if their hearts were ready to burst from their bodies, and they were afraid of what was coming. "Please, please," stammered Clarice. Lupin unfolded the paper. There was a set of names written one below the other, 27 of them, the 27 names of the famous list: Langeroux, de Chaumont, Voringblade, d'Albufex, Victory and Murgy, and the rest. And, at the foot, the signature of the chairman of the Two Seas Canal Company, the signature written in letters of blood. Lupin looked at his watch. "1:15, he said. "We have 20 minutes to spare. Let's have some lunch." "But," said Clarice, who was already beginning to lose her head, "don't forget." He simply said, "All I know is that I'm dying of hunger." He sat down at the table, cut himself a large slice of cold pie, and said to his accomplices, "Growler? A bite? You? Masher? I could do with a mouthful, Governor. Then hurry up, lads. And a glass of champagne to wash it down with. It's the chloroform patient's treat. Your health, Dobreck. Sweet champagne? Dry champagne? Extra dry." Chapter 11. The Cross of Lorraine. The moment Lupin had finished lunch, he at once and, so to speak, without transition, recovered all his mastery and authority. The time for joking was past, and he must no longer yield to his love of astonishing people with claptrap and conjuring tricks. Now that he had discovered the crystal stopper in the hiding place which he had guessed with absolute certainty, now that he possessed the list of the 27, it became a question of playing off the last game of the rubber without delay. It was child's play, no doubt, and what remained to be done presented no difficulty. Nevertheless, it was essential that he should perform these final actions with promptness, decision, and infallible perspicacity. The smallest blunder was irretrievable. Lupin knew this, but his strangely lucid brain had allowed for every contingency, and the movements and words which he was now about to make and utter were all fully prepared and matured. "Growler, the commissionaire is waiting on the Boulevard Gambetta with his barrow and the trunk which we bought. Bring him here and have the trunk carried up. If the people of the hotel ask any questions, say it's for the lady in number 130. Then, addressing his other companion, "Masha, go back to the station and take over the limousine. The price is arranged, 10,000 francs. Buy a chauffeur's cap and overcoat and bring the car to the hotel. The money, Governor." Lupin opened a pocketbook which had been removed from Dobreck's jacket and produced a huge bundle of banknotes. He separated 10 of them. "Here you are. Our friend appears to have been doing well at the club. Off with you, Masha." The two men went out through Clarice's room. Lupin availed himself of a moment when Clarice Murgy was not looking to stow away the pocketbook with the greatest satisfaction. "I shall have done a fair stroke of business," he said to himself. "When all the expenses are paid, I shall still be well to the good, and it's not over yet." Then turning to Clarice Murgy, he asked, "Have you a bag?" "Yes, I bought one when I reached Nice, with some linen and a few necessaries, for I left Paris unprepared. Get all that ready. Then go down to the office. Say that you are expecting a trunk which a commissionaire is bringing from the station cloakroom and that you will want to unpack and pack it again in your room, and tell them that you are leaving." When alone, Lupin examined Dobreck carefully, felt in all his pockets and appropriated everything that seemed to present any sort of interest. The growler was the first to return. The trunk, a large wicker hamper covered with black moleskin, was taken into Clarice's room. Assisted by Clarice and the growler, Lupin moved Dobreck and put him in the trunk, in a sitting posture, but with his head bent so as to allow of the lid being fastened. "I don't say that it's as comfortable as your berth in a sleeping car, my dear deputy," Lupin observed. "But, all the same, it's better than a coffin. At least, you can breathe. 3 little holes in each side. You have nothing to complain of." Then, unstopping a flask, "A drop more chloroform? You seem to love it." He soaked the pad once more, while, by his orders, Clarice and the growler propped up the deputy with linen, rugs, and pillows, which they had taken the precaution to heap in the trunk. "Capital," said Lupin. "That trunk is fit to go round the world. Lock it and strap it." The masher arrived, in a chauffeur's livery. "The car's below, Governor." "Good," he said. Take the trunk down between you. It would be dangerous to give it to the hotel servants. But if anyone meets us, well, what then, Masha? Aren't you a chauffeur? You're carrying the trunk of your employer here present, the lady in number 130, who will also go down, step into her motor, and wait for me 200 yards farther on. Growler, you helped to hoist the trunk up. Oh, first lock the partition door. Lupin went to the next room, closed the other door, shut the bolt, walked out, locked the door behind him and went down in the lift. In the office, he said, Dobreck has suddenly been called away to Monte Carlo. He asked me to say that he would not be back until Tuesday and that you were to keep his room for him. His things are all there. Here is the key. He walked away quietly and went after the car, where he found Clarice lamenting. We shall never be in Paris tomorrow. It's madness. The least breakdown. That's why you and I are going to take the train. It's safer. He put her into a cab and gave his parting instructions to the two men. 30 miles an hour, on the average. Do you understand? You're to drive and rest, turn and turn about. At that rate, you ought to be in Paris between 6 and 7 tomorrow evening. But don't force the pace. I'm keeping Dobreck, not because I want him for my plans, but as a hostage, and then by way of precaution. I like to feel that I can lay my hands on him during the next few days. So look after the dear fellow. Give him a few drops of chloroform every 3 or 4 hours. It's his one weakness. Off with you, Masha. And you, Dobreck, don't get excited up there. The roof will bear you all right. If you feel at all sick, don't mind. Off you go, Masha. He watched the car move into the distance and then told the cabman to drive to a post office, where he dispatched a telegram in these words. M. Prasville, Prefecture de Police, Paris. Person found. Will bring you document 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Urgent communication. Clarice. Clarice and Lupin reached the station by 2:30. If only there's room, said Clarice, who was alarmed at the least thing. Room? Why, our berths are booked. By whom? By Jacob. By Dobreck. How? Why, at the office of the hotel they gave me a letter which had come for Dobreck by express. It was the 2 berths which Jacob had sent him. Also, I have his deputy's pass. So we shall travel under the name of M and MME Dobreck, and we shall receive all the attention due to our rank and station. You see, my dear madam, that everything's arranged. The journey, this time, seemed short to Lupin. Clarice told him what she had done during the past few days. He himself explained the miracle of his sudden appearance in Dobreck's bedroom at the moment when his adversary believed him in Italy. A miracle? No, he said. But still a remarkable phenomenon took place in me when I left San Remo, a sort of mysterious intuition which prompted me first to try and jump out of the train, and the Masha prevented me, and next to rush to the window, let down the glass and follow the porter of the ambassador's palace, who had given me your message, with my eyes. Well, at that very minute, the porter aforesaid was rubbing his hands with an air of such satisfaction that, for no other reason, suddenly, I understood everything. I had been diddled, taken in by Dobreck, as you yourself were. Heaps of little details flashed across my mind. My adversary's scheme became clear to me from start to finish. Another minute, and the disaster would have been beyond remedy. I had, I confess, a few moments of real despair, at the thought that I should not be able to repair all the mistakes that had been made. It depended simply on the timetable of the trains, which would either allow me or would not allow me to find Dobreck's emissary on the railway platform at San Remo. This time, at last, chance favored me. We had hardly alighted at the first station when a train passed, for France. When we arrived at San Remo, the man was there. I had guessed right. He no longer wore his hotel porter's cap and frock coat, but a jacket and bowler. He stepped into a second-class compartment. From that moment, victory was assured. But how? Asked Clarice, who, in spite of the thoughts that obsessed her, was interested in Lupin's story. How did I find you? Lord, simply by not losing sight of Master Jacob, while leaving him free to move about as he pleased, knowing that he was bound to account for his actions to Dobreck. In point of fact, this morning, after spending the night in a small hotel at Nice, he met Dobreck on the Promenade des Anglais. They talked for some time. I followed them. Dobreck went back to the hotel, planted Jacob in one of the passages on the ground floor, opposite the telephone office, and went up in the lift. 10 minutes later, I knew the number of his room and knew that a lady had been occupying the next room, number 130, since the day before. "I believe we've done it," I said to the growler and the masher. "I tapped lightly at your door. No answer. And the door was locked." "Well?" asked Clarice. "Well, we opened it. Do you think there's only one key in the world that will work a lock? So I walked in. Nobody in your room. But the partition door was ajar. I slipped through it. Thenceforth, a mere hanging separated me from you, from Dobreck and from the packet of tobacco which I saw on the chimney slab. Then you knew the hiding place." A look round Dobreck's study in Paris showed me that that packet of tobacco had disappeared. "Besides—" "What?" "I knew, from certain confessions wrung from Dobreck in the Lover's Tower, that the word Marie held the key to the riddle. Since then I had certainly thought of this word, but with the preconceived notion that it was spelt M-A-R-I-E. Well, it was really the first two syllables of another word, which I guessed, so to speak, only at the moment when I was struck by the absence of the packet of tobacco." "What word do you mean?" "Maryland tobacco, the only tobacco that Dobreck smokes." And Lupin began to laugh. "Is not perfect. It makes matches that won't light and cigarettes filled with hay. But there's all the difference in the world between recognizing that fact and believing the Inland Revenue to be in league with Dobreck with the object of hiding the list of the 27 from the legitimate curiosity of the government and the enterprising efforts of Arsène Lupin. Observe that all Dobreck had to do, in order to introduce the crystal stopper, was to bear upon the band a little, loosen it, draw it back, unfold the yellow paper, remove the tobacco and fasten it up again. Observe also that all we had to do, in Paris, was to take the packet in our hands and examine it, in order to discover the hiding place. No matter. The packet itself, the plug of Maryland made up and passed by the state and by the Inland Revenue Office, was a sacred, intangible thing, a thing above suspicion. And nobody opened it. That was how that demon of a Dobreck allowed that untouched packet of tobacco to lie about for months on his table, among his pipes and among other unopened packets of tobacco. And no power on earth could have given anyone even the vaguest notion of looking into that harmless little cube. I would have you observe. Besides, Lupin went on pursuing his remarks relative to the packet of Maryland and the crystal stopper. His adversary's ingenuity and shrewdness interested him all the more inasmuch as Lupin had ended by getting the better of him. But to Clarice these topics mattered much less than did her anxiety as to the acts which must be performed to save her son, and she sat wrapped in her own thoughts and hardly listened to him. "Are you sure," she kept on repeating, "that you will succeed?" "Absolutely sure. But Prasville is not in Paris. If he's not there, he's at the Havre. I saw it in the paper yesterday. In any case, a telegram will bring him to Paris at once. And do you think that he has enough influence to obtain the pardon of Vautrin and Gilbert personally? No. If he had, we should have set him to work before now. But he is intelligent enough to understand the value of what we are bringing him and to act without a moment's delay. But, to be accurate, are you not deceived as to that value? Was Dobreck deceived? Was Dobreck not in a better position than any of us to know the full power of that paper? Did he not have 20 proofs of it, each more convincing than the last? Think of all that he was able to do, for the sole reason that people knew him to possess the list. They knew it, and that was all. He did not use the list, but he had it. And, having it, he killed your husband. He built up his fortune on the ruin and the disgrace of the 27. Only last week, one of the gamest of the lot, d'Albufex, cut his throat in a prison. No, take it from me, as the price of handing over that list, we could ask for anything we pleased. And we are asking for what? Almost nothing, less than nothing, the pardon of a child of 20. In other words, they will take us for idiots. What? We have in our hands. He stopped. Clarice, exhausted by so much excitement, sat fast asleep in front of him. They reached Paris at 8 o'clock in the morning. Lupin found 2 telegrams awaiting him at his flat in the Place de Clichy. One was from the Masher, dispatched from Avignon on the previous day and stating that all was going well and that they hoped to keep their appointment punctually that evening. The other was from Prasville, dated from the Havre and addressed to Clarice. Impossible return tomorrow Monday morning. Come to my office 5 o'clock. Reckon on you absolutely. 5 o'clock, said Clarice. How late? It's a first-rate hour, declared Lupin. Still, if If the execution is to take place tomorrow morning, is that what you mean to say? Don't be afraid to speak out, for the execution will not take place. The newspapers? You haven't read the newspapers and you are not to read them. Nothing that they can say matters in the least. One thing alone matters: our interview with Prasville. Besides, he took a little bottle from a cupboard and, putting his hand on Clarice's shoulder, said, "Lie down here, on the sofa, and take a few drops of this mixture. What's it for? It will make you sleep for a few hours, and forget. That's always so much gained." "No, no," protested Clarice, "I don't want to. Gilbert is not asleep. He is not forgetting." "Drink it," said Lupin, with gentle insistence. She yielded all of a sudden, from cowardice, from excessive suffering, and did as she was told and lay on the sofa and closed her eyes. In a few minutes she was asleep. Lupin rang for his servant. "The newspapers, quick. Have you bought them?" "Here they are, Governor." Lupin opened one of them and at once read the following lines. Arsène Lupin's accomplices. We know from a positive source that Arsène Lupin's accomplices, Gilbert and Vauthier, will be executed tomorrow, Tuesday, morning. M. Dibler has inspected the scaffold. Everything is ready. He raised his head with a defiant look. Arsène Lupin's accomplices. The execution of Arsène Lupin's accomplices. What a fine spectacle! And what a crowd there will be to witness it. Sorry, gentlemen, but the curtain will not rise. Theatre closed by order of the authorities. And the authorities are myself. He struck his chest violently, with an arrogant gesture. The authorities are myself. At 12 o'clock Lupin received a telegram which the Masher had sent from Lyons. All well. Goods will arrive without damage. At 3 o'clock Clarice woke. Her first words were, "Is it to be tomorrow?" He did not answer, but she saw him look so calm and smiling that she felt herself permeated with an immense sense of peace and received the impression that everything was finished, disentangled, settled according to her companion's will. They left the house at 10 minutes past 4. Prasville's secretary, who had received his chief's instructions by telephone, showed them into the office and asked them to wait. It was 4:45. Prasville came running in at 5 o'clock exactly and, at once, cried, "Have you the list?" "Yes." "Give it me." He put out his hand. Clarice, who had risen from her chair, did not stir. Prasville looked at her for a moment, hesitated and sat down. He understood. In pursuing Dobreck, Clarice Murgy had not acted only from hatred and the desire for revenge. Another motive prompted her. The paper would not be handed over except upon conditions. "Sit down, please," he said, thus showing that he accepted the discussion. Clarice resumed her seat and, when she remained silent, Prasville said, "Speak, my friend, and speak quite frankly. I do not scruple to say that we wish to have that paper." "If it is only a wish," remarked Clarice, whom Lupin had coached in her part down to the least detail. "If it is only a wish, I fear that we shall not be able to come to an arrangement." Prasville smiled. "The wish, obviously, would lead us to make certain sacrifices." "Every sacrifice," said Mme. Murgy, correcting him. "Every sacrifice, provided, of course, that we keep within the bounds of acceptable requirements. And even if we go beyond those bounds," said Clarice, inflexibly. Prasville began to lose patience. "Come, what is it all about? Explain yourself. Forgive me, my friend, but I wanted above all to mark the great importance which you attach to that paper and, in view of the immediate transaction which we are about to conclude, to specify, what shall I say, the value of my share in it. That value, which has no limits, must, I repeat, be exchanged for an unlimited value." "Agreed," said Prasville, querulously. "I presume, therefore, that it is unnecessary for me to trace the whole story of the business or to enumerate, on the one hand, the disasters which the possession of that paper would have allowed you to avert and, on the other hand, the incalculable advantages which you will be able to derive from its possession." Prasville had to make an effort to contain himself and to answer in a tone that was civil, or nearly so. "I admit everything. Is that enough? I beg your pardon, but we cannot explain ourselves too plainly. And there is one point that remains to be cleared up. Are you in a position to treat, personally?" "How do you mean?" "I want to know not, of course, if you are empowered to settle this business here and now, but if, in dealing with me, You represent the views of those who know the business and who are qualified to settle it. Yes, declared Prasville forcibly, so that I can have your answer within an hour after I have told you my conditions. Yes. Will the answer be that of the government? Yes. Clarice bent forward and, sinking her voice. Will the answer be that of the LSE? Prasville appeared surprised. He reflected for a moment and then said, Yes. It only remains for me to ask you to give me your word of honor that, however incomprehensible my conditions may appear to you, you will not insist on my revealing the reason. They are what they are. Your answer must be yes or no. I give you my word of honor, said Prasville, formally. Clarice underwent a momentary agitation that made her turn paler still. Then, mastering herself, with her eyes fixed on Prasville's eyes, she said, You shall have the list of the 27 in exchange for the pardon of Gilbert and Vautrin. Eh? What? Prasville leapt from his chair, looking absolutely dumbfounded. The pardon of Gilbert and Vautrin? Of Arsène Lupin's accomplices? Yes, she said. The murderers of the Villa Maritois? The two who are due to die tomorrow? Yes, those two, she said, in a loud voice. I demand their pardon. But this is madness. Why? Why should you? I must remind you, Prasville, that you gave me your word. Yes. I know. But the thing is so unexpected. Why? Why? For all sorts of reasons. What reasons? Well, but think. Gilbert and Vautrin have been sentenced to death. Send them to penal servitude. That's all you have to do. Impossible. The case has created an enormous sensation. They are Arsène Lupin's accomplices. The whole world knows about the verdict. Well, we cannot go against the decrees of justice. You are not asked to do that. You are asked for a commutation of punishment as an act of mercy. Mercy is a legal thing. The pardoning commission has given its finding. True, but there remains the President of the Republic. He has refused. He can reconsider his refusal. Impossible. Why? There's no excuse for it. He needs no excuse. The right of mercy is absolute. It is exercised without control, without reason, without excuse or explanation. It is a royal prerogative. The President of the Republic can wield it according to his good pleasure, or rather according to his conscience, in the best interests of the state. But it is too late. Everything is ready. The execution is to take place in a few hours. 1 hour is long enough to obtain your answer. You have just told us so. But this is confounded madness. There are insuperable obstacles to your conditions. I tell you again, it's impossible, physically impossible. Then the answer is no. No. 1,000 times no. In that case, there is nothing left for us to do but to go. She moved toward the door. Nicole followed her. Prasville bounded across the room and barred their way. Where are you going? Well, my friend, it seems to me that our conversation is at an end. As you appear to think, in fact, you are certain that the President of the Republic will not consider the famous list of the 27 to be worth. Stay where you are, said Prasville. He turned the key in the door and began to pace the room, with his hands behind his back and his eyes fixed on the floor. And Lupin, who had not breathed a word during the whole of this scene and who had prudently contented himself with playing a colorless part, said to himself, What a fuss! What a lot of affectation to arrive at the inevitable result. As though Prasville, who is not a genius, but not an absolute blockhead either, would be likely to lose the chance of revenging himself on his mortal enemy. There, what did I say? The idea of hurling Dobreck into the bottomless pit appeals to him. Come, we've won the rubber. Prasville was opening a small inner door which led to the office of his private secretary. He gave an order aloud. Lartigue, telephone to the LSE and say that I request the favor of an audience for a communication of the utmost importance. He closed the door, came back to Clarice and said, In any case, my intervention is limited to submitting your proposal. Once you submit it, it will be accepted. A long silence followed. Clarice's features expressed so profound a delight that Prasville was struck by it and looked at her with attentive curiosity. For what mysterious reason did Clarice wish to save Gilbert and Vautrin? What was the incomprehensible link that bound her to those two men? What tragedy connected those three lives and, no doubt, Dobreck's in addition? Go ahead, old boy, thought Lupin. Cudgel your brains. You'll never spot it. Ah, if we had asked for Gilbert's pardon only, as Clarice wished, you might have twigged the secret. But Vauthier, that brute of a Vauthier, there really could not be the least bond between Mme Murgy and him. Aha, by jingo, it's my turn now. He's watching me. The inward soliloquy is turning upon myself. I wonder who that M. Nicole can be? Why has that little provincial usher devoted himself body and soul to Clarice Murgy? Who is that old bore? If the truth were known, I made a mistake in not inquiring. I must look into this. I must rip off the beggar's mask. For, after all, it's not natural that a man should take so much trouble about a matter in which he is not directly interested. Why should he also wish to save Gilbert and Vauthier? Why? Why should he? Lupin turned his head away. Look out! Look out! There's a notion passing through that red-tape merchant's skull. A confused notion which he can't put into words. Hang it all, he mustn't suspect M. Lupin under M. Nicole. The thing's complicated enough as it is, in all conscience. But there was a welcome interruption. Prasville's secretary came to say that the audience would take place in an hour's time. Very well. Thank you, said Prasville. That will do. And, resuming the interview, with no further circumlocution, speaking like a man who means to put a thing through, he declared, I think that we shall be able to manage it. But, first of all, so that I may do what I have undertaken to do, I want more precise information, fuller details. Where was the paper? In the crystal stopper, as we thought, said Mme Murgy. And where was the crystal stopper? In an object which Daubrecq came and fetched, a few days ago, from the writing desk in his study in the Square Lamartine. An object which I took from him yesterday. What sort of object? Simply a packet of tobacco, Maryland tobacco, which used to lie about on the desk. Prasville was petrified. He muttered, guilelessly, Oh, if I had only known. I've had my hand on that packet of Maryland a dozen times. How stupid of me. What does it matter? Said Clarice. The great thing is that the discovery is made. Prasville pulled a face which implied that the discovery would have been much pleasanter if he himself had made it. Then he asked, So you have the list? Yes. Show it to me. And, when Clarice hesitated, he added, Oh, please, don't be afraid. The list belongs to you, and I will give it back to you. But you must understand that I cannot take the step in question without making certain. Clarice consulted M. Nicole with a glance which did not escape Prasville. Then she said, Here it is. He seized the scrap of paper with a certain excitement, examined it and almost immediately said, Yes, the secretary's writing. I recognize it. And the signature of the chairman of the company, the signature in red. Besides, I have other proofs. For instance, the torn piece which completes the left-hand top corner of this sheet. He opened his safe and, from a special cash box, produced a tiny piece of paper which he put against the top left corner. That's right. The torn edges fit exactly. The proof is undeniable. All that remains is to verify the make of this foreign post paper. Clarice was radiant with delight. No one would have believed that the most terrible torture had racked her for weeks and weeks and that she was still bleeding and quivering from its effects. While Prasville was holding the paper against a window pane, she said to Lupin, I insist upon having Gilbert informed this evening. He must be so awfully unhappy. Yes, said Lupin. Besides, you can go to his lawyer and tell him. She continued, and then I must see Gilbert tomorrow. Prasville can think what he likes. Of course. But he must first gain his cause at the LSE. There can't be any difficulty, can there? No. You saw that he gave way at once. Prasville continued his examination with the aid of a magnifying glass and compared the sheet with the scrap of torn paper. Next, he took from the cash box some other sheets of letter paper and examined one of these by holding it up to the light. That's done, he said. My mind is made up. Forgive me, dear friend. It was a very difficult piece of work. I passed through various stages. When all is said, I had my suspicions, and not without cause. What do you mean? Asked Clarice. 1 second. I must give an order first. He called his secretary. Please telephone at once to the LSE. Make my apologies and say that I shall not require the audience, for reasons which I will explain later. He closed the door and returned to his desk. Clarice and Lupin stood choking, looking at him in stupefaction, failing to understand this sudden change. Was he mad? Was it a trick on his part? A breach of faith? And was he refusing to keep his promise? Now that he possessed the list? He held it out to Clarice. You can have it back. Have it back. And return it to Dorbreck. To Dorbreck? Unless you prefer to burn it. What do you say? I say that, if I were in your place, I would burn it. Why do you say that? It's ridiculous. On the contrary, it is very sensible. But why? 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 I will tell you. The list of the 27, as we know for absolutely certain, was written on a sheet of letter paper belonging to the chairman of the canal company, of which there are a few samples in this cash box. Now all these samples have as a watermark a little cross of Lorraine which is almost invisible, but which can just be seen in the thickness of the paper when you hold it up to the light. The sheet which you have brought me does not contain that little cross of Lorraine. Lupin felt a nervous trembling shake him from head to foot, and he dared not turn his eyes on Clarice, realizing what a terrible blow this was to her. He heard her stammer. Then are we to suppose that Dorbreck was taken in? Not a bit of it, exclaimed Prasville. It is you who have been taken in, my poor friend. Dorbreck has the real list, the list which he stole from the dying man's safe. But this one is a forgery. A forgery. An undoubted forgery. It was an admirable piece of cunning on Dorbreck's part. Dazzled by the crystal stopper which he flashed before your eyes, you did nothing but look for that stopper in which he had stowed away no matter what, the first bit of paper that came to hand, while he quietly kept. Prasville interrupted himself. Clarice was walking up to him with short, stiff steps, like an automaton. She said, Then what, dear friend? You refuse. Certainly, I am obliged to. I have no choice. You refuse to take that step. Look here. How can I do what you ask? It's not possible, on the strength of a valueless document. You won't do it. You won't do it. And, tomorrow morning, in a few hours. Gilbert! She was frightfully pale, her face sunk, like the face of one dying. Her eyes opened wider and her teeth chattered. Lupin, fearing the useless and dangerous words which she was about to utter, seized her by the shoulders and tried to drag her away. But she thrust him back with indomitable strength, took 2 or 3 more steps, staggered, as though on the point of falling, and, suddenly, in a burst of energy and despair, laid hold of Prasville and screamed, You shall go to the Elysee. You shall go at once. You must. You must save Gilbert. Please, please, my dear friend, calm yourself. She gave a strident laugh. Calm myself. When, tomorrow morning, Gilbert. Ah, no, I am terrified. It's appalling. Oh, run, you wretch, run. Obtain his pardon. Don't you understand? Gilbert. Gilbert is my son. My son. My son. Prasville gave a cry. The blade of a knife flashed in Clarice's hand, and she raised her arm to strike herself. But the movement was not completed. Nicole caught her arm in its descent and, taking the knife from Clarice, reducing her to helplessness, he said, in a voice that rang through the room like steel, What you are doing is madness. When I gave you my oath that I would save him, you must live for him. Gilbert shall not die. How can he die, when I gave you my oath? Gilbert, my son, moaned Clarice. He clasped her fiercely, drew her against himself and put his hand over her mouth. Enough! Be quiet. I entreat you to be quiet. Gilbert shall not die. With irresistible authority, he dragged her away like a subdued child that suddenly becomes obedient. But, at the moment of opening the door, he turned to Prasville. Wait for me here, monsieur, he commanded, in an imperative tone. If you care about that list of the 27, the real list, wait for me. I shall be back in an hour, in 2 hours, at most, and then we will talk business. And abruptly, to Clarice, And you, madam, a little courage yet. I command you to show courage, in Gilbert's name. He went away, through the passages, down the stairs, with a jerky step, holding Clarice under the arm, as he might have held a lay figure, supporting her, carrying her almost. A courtyard, another courtyard, then the street. Meanwhile, Prasville, surprised at first, bewildered by the course of events, was gradually recovering his composure and thinking. He thought of that Nicole, a mere supernumerary at first, who played beside Clarice the part of one of those advisors to whom we cling in the serious crises of our lives and who suddenly, shaking off his torpor, appeared in the full light of day, resolute, masterful, mettlesome, brimming over with daring, ready to overthrow all the obstacles that fate placed on his path. Who was there that was capable of acting thus? Prasville started. The question had no sooner occurred to his mind than the answer flashed on him, with absolute certainty. All the proofs rose up, each more exact, each more convincing than the last. Hurriedly he rang. Hurriedly he sent for the chief detective inspector on duty. And, feverishly, "Were you in the waiting room, Chief Inspector?" "Yes, Monsieur le Secrétaire General." "Did you see a gentleman and a lady go out?" "Yes." "Would you know the man again?" "Yes." "Then don't lose a moment, Chief Inspector. Take 6 inspectors with you. Go to the Place de Clichy. Make inquiries about a man called Nicole and watch the house. The Nicole man is on his way back there. And if he comes out, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, arrest him. Here's a warrant." He sat down to his desk and wrote a name on a form. "Here you are, Chief Inspector. I will let the chief detective know." The chief inspector seemed staggered. "But you spoke to me of a man called Nicole, Monsieur le Secrétaire General." "Well, the warrant is in the name of Arsène Lupin. Arsène Lupin and the Nicole man are one and the same individual." Chapter 12. The Scaffold. "I will save him, I will save him," Lupin repeated, without ceasing, in the taxicab in which he and Clarice drove away. "I swear that I will save him." Clarice did not listen, sat as though numbed, as though possessed by some great nightmare of death, which left her ignorant of all that was happening outside her. And Lupin set forth his plans, perhaps more to reassure himself than to convince Clarice. No, no, the game is not lost yet. There is one trump left, a huge trump, in the shape of the letters and documents which Vorenglade, the ex-deputy, is offering to sell to Dorbreck and of which Dorbreck spoke to you yesterday at Nice. I shall buy those letters and documents of Stanislas Vorenglade at whatever price he chooses to name. Then we shall go back to the police office and I shall say to Prasville, go to the LSE at once. Use the list as though it were genuine. Save Gilbert from death and be content to acknowledge tomorrow, when Gilbert is saved, that the list is forged. Be off, quickly. If you refuse, well, if you refuse, the Vorenglade letters and documents shall be reproduced tomorrow, Tuesday, morning in one of the leading newspapers. Vorenglade will be arrested. And Prasville will find himself in prison before night. Lupin rubbed his hands. He'll do as is told. He'll do as is told. I felt that at once, when I was with him. The thing appeared to me as a dead certainty. And I found Vorenglade's address in Dorbreck's pocketbooks. So, driver, Boulevard Raspail. They went to the address given. Lupin sprang from the cab, ran up 3 flights of stairs. The servant said that Vorenglade was away and would not be back until dinner-time next evening. And don't you know where he is? Vorenglade is in London, sir. Lupin did not utter a word on returning to the cab. Clarice, on her side, did not even ask him any questions. So indifferent had she become to everything. So absolutely did she look upon her son's death as an accomplished fact. They drove to the Place de Clichy. As Lupin entered the house, he passed 2 men who were just leaving the porter's box. He was too much engrossed to notice them. They were Prasville's inspectors. No telegram, he asked his servant. No, Governor, replied Akil. No news of the Masher and the Growler. No, Governor, none. That's all right, he said to Clarice, in a casual tone. It's only 7 o'clock and we mustn't reckon on seeing them before 8 or 9. Prasville will have to wait, that's all. I will telephone to him to wait. He did so and was hanging up the receiver when he heard a moan behind him. Clarice was standing by the table, reading an evening paper. She put her hand to her heart, staggered and fell. Akil, Akil, cried Lupin, calling his man. Help me put her on my bed. And then go to the cupboard and get me the medicine bottle marked number 4, the bottle with the sleeping draught. He forced open her teeth with the point of a knife and compelled her to swallow half the bottle. Good, he said. Now the poor thing won't wake till tomorrow, after. He glanced through the paper, which was still clutched in Clarice's hand, and read the following lines. The strictest measures have been taken to keep order at the execution of Gilbert and Vauteret, lest Arsène Lupin should make an attempt to rescue his accomplices from the last penalty. At 12 o'clock tonight, a cordon of troops will be drawn across all the approaches to the Santi prison. As already stated, the execution will take place outside the prison walls, in the square formed by the Boulevard Arago and the Rue de la Santé. We have succeeded in obtaining some details of the attitude of the two condemned men. Vauthier observes a stolid sullenness and is awaiting the fatal event with no little courage. "Crikey," he says, "I can't say I'm delighted, but I've got to go through it and I shall keep my end up." And he adds, "Death I don't care a hang about. What worries me is the thought that they're going to cut my head off. If the governor could only hit on some trick to send me straight off to the next world before I had time to say knife. A drop of prussic acid, Governor, if you please." Gilbert's calmness is even more impressive, especially when we remember how he broke down at the trial. He retains an unshaken confidence in the omnipotence of Arsène Lupin. "The governor shouted to me before everybody not to be afraid, that he was there, that he answered for everything. Well, I'm not afraid. I shall rely on him until the last day, until the last minute, at the very foot of the scaffold. I know the governor. There's no danger with him. He has promised and he will keep his word. If my head were off, he'd come and clap it on my shoulders and firmly. Arsène Lupin allow his chum Gilbert to die. Not he. Excuse my humor. There is a certain touching frankness in all this enthusiasm which is not without a dignity of its own. We shall see if Arsène Lupin deserves the confidence so blindly placed in him." Lupin was hardly able to finish reading the article for the tears that dimmed his eyes. Tears of affection, tears of pity, tears of distress. No, he did not deserve the confidence of his chum Gilbert. Certainly, he had performed impossibilities. But there are circumstances in which we must perform more than impossibilities, in which we must show ourselves stronger than fate. And, this time, fate had been stronger than he. Ever since the first day and throughout this lamentable adventure, events had gone contrary to his anticipations, contrary to logic itself. Clarice and he, though pursuing an identical aim, had wasted weeks in fighting each other. Then, at the moment when they were uniting their efforts, a series of ghastly disasters had come one after the other. The kidnapping of little Jacques, D'Orbrec's disappearance, his imprisonment in the Lover's Tower, Lupin's wound, his enforced inactivity, followed by the cunning maneuvers that dragged Clarice, and Lupin after her, to the south, to Italy. And then, as a crowning catastrophe, when, after prodigies of willpower, after miracles of perseverance, they were entitled to think that the Golden Fleece was won, it all came to nothing. The list of the 27 had no more value than the most insignificant scrap of paper. "The game's up," said Lupin. "It's an absolute defeat. What if I do revenge myself on D'Orbrec? Ruin him and destroy him. He is the real victor. Once Gilbert is going to die." He wept anew, not with spite or rage, but with despair. Gilbert was going to die. The lad whom he called his chum, the best of his pals, would be gone forever, in a few hours. He could not save him. He was at the end of his tether. He did not even look round for a last expedient. What was the use? And his persuasion of his own helplessness was so deep, so definite that he felt no shock of any kind on receiving a telegram from the masher that said, "Motor accident. Essential part broken. Long repair. Arrive tomorrow morning." It was a last proof to show that fate had uttered its decree. He no longer thought of rebelling against the decision. He looked at Clarice. She was peacefully sleeping. And this total oblivion, this absence of all consciousness, seemed to him so enviable that, suddenly yielding to a fit of cowardice, he seized the bottle, still half filled with a sleeping draught, and drank it down. Then he stretched himself on a couch and rang for his man. "Go to bed, Achille, and don't wake me on any pretense whatever." "Then there's nothing to be done for Gilbert and Vauthier, Governor," said Achille. "Nothing. Are they going through it?" "They are going through it." 20 minutes later Lupin fell into a heavy sleep. It was 10 o'clock in the evening. The night was full of incident and noise around the prison. At 1 o'clock in the morning the Rue de la Santé, the Boulevard Arago and all the streets abutting on the gale were guarded by police, who allowed no one to pass without a regular cross-examination. For that matter, it was raining in torrents, and it seemed as though the lovers of this sort of show would not be very numerous. The public houses were all closed by special order. At 4 o'clock 3 companies of infantry came and took up their positions along the pavements, while a battalion occupied the Boulevard Arago in case of a surprise. Municipal guards cantered up and down between the lines. A whole staff of police magistrates, officers, and functionaries, brought together for the occasion, moved about among the troops. The guillotine was set up in silence, in the middle of the square formed by the boulevard and the street, and the sinister sound of hammering was heard. But, at 5 o'clock, the crowd gathered, notwithstanding the rain, and people began to sing. They shouted for the footlights, called for the curtain to rise, were exasperated to see that, at the distance at which the barriers had been fixed, they could hardly distinguish the uprights of the guillotine. Several carriages drove up, bringing official persons dressed in black. There were cheers and hoots, whereupon a troop of mounted municipal guards scattered the groups and cleared the space to a distance of 300 yards from the square. 2 fresh companies of soldiers lined up, and suddenly there was a great silence. A vague white light fell from the dark sky. The rain ceased abruptly. Inside the prison, at the end of the passage containing the condemned cells, the men in black were conversing in low voices. Prasville was talking to the public prosecutor, who expressed his fears. "No, no," declared Prasville. "I assure you, it will pass without an incident of any kind. Do your reports mention nothing at all suspicious, Monsieur le Secrétaire General?" "Nothing. And they can't mention anything, for the simple reason that we have Lupin." "Do you mean that?" "Yes. We know his hiding place. The house where he lives, on the Place de Clichy, and where he went at 7 o'clock last night, is surrounded. Moreover, I know the scheme which he had contrived to save his 2 accomplices. The scheme miscarried at the last moment. We have nothing to fear, therefore. The law will take its course." Meanwhile, the hour had struck. They took Vautrin first, and the governor of the prison ordered the door of his cell to be opened. Vautrin leapt out of bed and cast eyes dilated with terror upon the men who entered. "Vautrin, we have come to tell you." Stow that, he muttered. "No words. I know all about it. Get on with the business." One would have thought that he was in a hurry for it to be over as fast as possible. So readily did he submit to the usual preparations. But he would not allow any of them to speak to him. "No words," he repeated. "What? Confess to the priest? Not worthwhile. I have shed blood. The law sheds my blood. It's the good old rule. We're quits." Nevertheless, he stopped short for a moment. "I say, is my mate going through it too?" And, when he heard that Gilbert would go to the scaffold at the same time as himself, he had 2 or 3 seconds of hesitation, glanced at the bystanders, seemed about to speak, was silent and, at last, muttered, "It's better so. They'll pull us through together. We'll clink glasses together." Gilbert was not asleep either, when the men entered his cell. Sitting on his bed, he listened to the terrible words, tried to stand up, began to tremble frightfully, from head to foot, like a skeleton when shaken, and then fell back, sobbing. "Oh, my poor mummy, he stammered. They tried to question him about that mother, of whom he had never spoken. But his tears were interrupted by a sudden fit of rebellion, and he cried, "I have done no murder. I won't die. I have done no murder." "Gilbert," they said, "show yourself a man." Yes, but I have done no murder. Why should I die?" His teeth chattered so loudly that words which he uttered became unintelligible. He let the men do their work, made his confession, heard mass, and then, growing calmer and almost docile, with the voice of a little child resigning itself, murmured, "Tell my mother that I beg her forgiveness." "Your mother?" "Yes. Put what I say in the papers. She will understand." "And then?" "What, Gilbert?" "Well, I want the governor to know that I have not lost confidence." He gazed at the bystanders, one after the other, as though he entertained the mad hope that the governor was one of them, disguised beyond recognition and ready to carry him off in his arms. "Yes," he said, gently and with a sort of religious piety. "Yes, I still have confidence, even at this moment." "Be sure and let him know, won't you?" "I am positive that he will not let me die. I am certain of it." They guessed, from the fixed look in his eyes, that he saw Lupin, that he felt Lupin's shadow prowling around and seeking an inlet through which to get to him. And never was anything more touching than the sight of that stripling, clad in the strait-jacket, with his arms and legs bound, guarded by thousands of men, whom the executioner already held in his inexorable hand and who, nevertheless, hoped on. Anguish wrung the hearts of all the beholders. Their eyes were dimmed with tears. "Poor little chap," stammered someone. Prasville, touched like the rest and thinking of Clarice, repeated, in a whisper, "Poor little chap." But the hour struck. The preparations were finished. They set out. The two processions met in the passage. Vauthier, on seeing Gilbert, snapped out, "I say, Kitty, the governor's chucked us." And he added a sentence which nobody, save Prasville, was able to understand. "Expect he prefers to pocket the proceeds of the crystal stopper." They went down the staircases. They crossed the prison yards. An endless, horrible distance. And, suddenly, in the frame of the great doorway, the wan light of day, the rain, the street, the outlines of houses, while far-off sounds came through the awful silence. They walked along the wall, to the corner of the boulevard. A few steps farther Vauthier started back. He had seen. Gilbert crept along, with lowered head, supported by an executioner's assistant and by the chaplain, who made him kiss the crucifix as he went. There stood the guillotine. "No, no," shouted Gilbert. "I won't. I won't. Help! Help!" A last appeal, lost in space. The executioner gave a signal. Vauthier was laid hold of, lifted, dragged along, almost at a run. And then came this staggering thing, a shot fired from the other side, from one of the houses opposite. The assistants stopped short. The burden which they were dragging had collapsed in their arms. "What is it? What's happened?" asked everybody. "He's wounded." Blood spurted from Vauthier's forehead and covered his face. He spluttered. "That's done it. 1 in 1,000. Thank you, Governor, thank you. Finish him off." "Carry him there," said a voice, amid the general confusion. "But he's dead. Get on with it. Finish him off." Tumult was at its height. In the little group of magistrates, officials, and policemen, every one was giving orders. "Execute him. The law must take its course. We have no right to delay. It would be cowardice. Execute him. But the man's dead. That makes no difference. The law must be obeyed. Execute him." The chaplain protested, while two warders and Prasville kept their eyes on Gilbert. In the meantime, the assistants had taken up the corpse again and were carrying it to the guillotine. "Hurry up," cried the executioner, scared and hoarse-voiced. "Hurry up." And the other one to follow. "Waste no time." He had not finished speaking when a second report rang out. He spun round on his heels and fell, groaning. "It's nothing, a wound in the shoulder." "Go on." The next one's turn. But his assistants were running away, yelling with terror. The space around the guillotine was cleared, and the prefect of police, rallying his men, drove everybody back to the prison, helter-skelter, like a disordered rabble. The magistrates, the officials, the condemned man, the chaplain, all who had passed through the archway 2 or 3 minutes before. In the meanwhile, a squad of policemen, detectives, and soldiers were rushing upon the house, a little old-fashioned, 3-storied house, with a ground floor occupied by 2 shops which happened to be empty. Immediately after the first shot, they had seen, vaguely, at one of the windows on the second floor, a man holding a rifle in his hand and surrounded with a cloud of smoke. Revolver shots were fired at him, but missed him. He, standing calmly on a table, took aim a second time, fired from the shoulder, and the crack of the second report was heard. Then he withdrew into the room. Down below, as nobody answered the peal at the bell, the assailants demolished the door, which gave way almost immediately. They made for the staircase, but their onrush was at once stopped, on the first floor, by an accumulation of beds, chairs, and other furniture, forming a regular barricade and so close and tangled that it took the aggressors 4 or 5 minutes to clear themselves a passage. Those 4 or 5 minutes lost were enough to render all pursuit hopeless. When they reached the second floor, they heard a voice shouting from above. "This way, friends. 18 stairs more. 1,000 apologies for giving you so much trouble." They ran up those 18 stairs, and nimbly at that. But, at the top, above the 3rd story, was the garret, which was reached by a ladder and a trapdoor. And the fugitive had taken away the ladder and bolted the trapdoor. The reader will not have forgotten the sensation created by this amazing action. The editions of the papers issued in quick succession, the newsboys tearing and shouting through the streets, the whole metropolis on edge with indignation and, we may say, with anxious curiosity. But it was at the headquarters of police that the excitement developed into a paroxysm. Men flung themselves about on every side. Messages, telegrams, telephone calls followed one upon the other. At last, at 11 o'clock in the morning, there was a meeting in the office of the prefect of police, and Prasville was there. The chief detective read a report of his inquiry, the results of which amounted to this. Shortly before midnight yesterday, someone had rung at the house on the Boulevard Arago. The portress, who slept in a small room on the ground floor, behind one of the shops, pulled the rope. A man came and tapped at her door. He said that he had come from the police on an urgent matter concerning tomorrow's execution. The portress opened the door and was at once attacked, gagged, and bound. 10 minutes later, a lady and gentleman who lived on the first floor and who had just come home were also reduced to helplessness by the same individual and locked up, each in one of the two empty shops. The third-floor tenant underwent a similar fate, but in his own flat and his own bedroom, which the man was able to enter without being heard. The second floor was unoccupied, and the man took up his quarters there. He was now master of the house. "And there we are," said the prefect of police, beginning to laugh, with a certain bitterness. "There we are. It's as simple as shelling peas. Only, what surprises me is that he was able to get away so easily. I will ask you to observe, Monsieur le Préfet, that, being absolute master of the house from 1 o'clock in the morning, he had until 5 o'clock to prepare his flight. And that flight took place over the roofs. At that spot, the houses in the next street, the Rue de la Glacière, are quite near, and there is only one break in the roofs, about 3 yards wide, with a drop of 1 yard in height. Well, our man had taken away the ladder leading to the garret and used it as a footbridge. After crossing to the next block of buildings, all he had to do was to look through the windows until he found an empty attic, enter one of the houses in the Rue de la Glacière, and walk out quietly with his hands in his pockets. In this way his flight, duly prepared beforehand, was effected very simply and without the least obstacle. But you had taken the necessary measures, those which you ordered, Monsieur le Préfet. My men spent 3 hours last evening visiting all the houses, so as to make sure that there was no stranger hiding there. At the moment when they were leaving the last house, I had the street barred. Our man must have slipped through during that few minutes interval. Capital. And there is no doubt in your minds, of course, it's Arsène Lupin. Not a doubt. In the first place, it was all a question of his accomplices. And then, no one but Arsène Lupin was capable of contriving such a masterstroke and carrying it out with that inconceivable boldness. But, in that case, muttered the prefect of police, and, turning to Prasville, he continued, "But, in that case, my dear Prasville, the fellow of whom you spoke to me, the fellow whom you and the chief detective have had watched since yesterday evening, in his flat in the Place de Clichy, the fellow is not Arsène Lupin." "Yes, he is, Monsieur le Préfet. There is no doubt about that either." "Then why wasn't he arrested when he went out last night?" "He did not go out. I say, this is getting complicated. It's quite simple, Monsieur le Préfet. Like all the houses in which traces of Arsène Lupin are to be found, the house in the Place de Clichy has 2 outlets. And you didn't know it?" "I didn't know it. I only discovered it this morning, on inspecting the flat." "Was there no one in the flat?" "No. The servant, a man called Akil, went away this morning, taking with him a lady who was staying with Lupin." "What was the lady's name?" "I don't know," replied Prasville, after an imperceptible hesitation. "But you know the name under which Arsène Lupin passed?" "Yes, M. Nicole, a private tutor, master of arts and so on. Here is his card." As Prasville finished speaking, an office messenger came to tell the prefect of police that he was wanted immediately at the Elysee. The Prime Minister was there already. "I'm coming," he said, and he added, between his teeth, "It's to decide upon Gilbert's fate." Prasville ventured, "Do you think they will pardon him, Monsieur le Préfet?" "Never. After last night's affair, it would make a most deplorable impression. Gilbert must pay his debt tomorrow morning." The messenger had, at the same time, handed Prasville a visiting card. Prasville now looked at it, gave a start and muttered, "Well, I'm hanged. What a nerve." "What's the matter?" asked the prefect of police. Nothing, Monsieur le Préfet," declared Prasville, who did not wish to share with another the honor of seeing this business through. Nothing, an unexpected visit. I hope soon to have the pleasure of telling you the result. And he walked away, mumbling, with an air of amazement. Well, upon my word, what a nerve the beggar has. What a nerve! The visiting card which he held in his hand bore these words. M. Nicole, Master of Arts, Private Tutor. Chapter 13. The Last Battle. When Prasville returned to his office, he saw M. Nicole sitting on a bench in the waiting room, with his bent back, his ailing air, his gingham umbrella, his rusty hat, and his single glove. "Is he all right?" said Prasville, who had feared for a moment that Lupin might have sent another M. Nicole to see him. "And the fact that he has come in person proves that he does not suspect that I have seen through him. And, for the third time," he said, "all the same, what a nerve!" He shut the door of his office and called his secretary. "M. Lartigue, I am having a rather dangerous person shown in here. The chances are that he will have to leave my office with the bracelets on. As soon as he is in my room, make all the necessary arrangements. Send for a dozen inspectors and have them posted in the waiting room and in your office. And take this as a definite instruction. The moment I ring, you are all to come in, revolvers in hand, and surround the fellow. Do you quite understand?" "Yes, Monsieur le Secrétaire General." "Above all, no hesitation. A sudden entrance, in a body, revolvers in hand. Send M. Nicole in, please." As soon as he was alone, Prasville covered the push of an electric bell on his desk with some papers and placed 2 revolvers of respectable dimensions behind a rampart of books. "And now," he said to himself, "to sit tight. If he has the list, let's collar it. If he hasn't, let's collar him. And, if possible, let's collar both. Lupin and the list of the 27, on the same day, especially after the scandal of this morning, would be a scoop in 1,000. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," said Prasville. And, rising from his seat, "Come in, M. Nicole. Come in." M. Nicole crept timidly into the room, sat down on the extreme edge of the chair to which Prasville pointed and said, "I have come, to resume our conversation of yesterday. Please excuse the delay, monsieur." "1 second," said Prasville. "Will you allow me?" He stepped briskly to the outer room and, seeing his secretary, "I was forgetting, M. Lartigue. Have the staircases and passages searched in case of accomplices." He returned, settled himself comfortably, as though for a long and interesting conversation, and began. "You were saying, M. Nicole." "I was saying, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, that I must apologize for keeping you waiting yesterday evening. I was detained by different matters. First of all, Emily Murgy." "Yes, you had to see Emily Murgy home." "Just so, and to look after her. You can understand the poor thing's despair. Her son Gilbert so near death. And such a death. At that time we could only hope for a miracle, an impossible miracle. I myself was resigned to the inevitable. You know as well as I do, when fate shows itself implacable, one ends by despairing. But I thought," observed Prasville, "that your intention, on leaving me, was to drag Daubrecq's secret from him at all costs." "Certainly, but Daubrecq was not in Paris." "Oh, no. He was on his way to Paris in a motor car. Have you a motor car, M. Nicole?" "Yes, when I need it. An out-of-date concern, an old tin kettle of sorts." "Well, he was on his way to Paris in a motor car, or rather on the roof of a motor car, inside a trunk in which I packed him. But, unfortunately, the motor was unable to reach Paris until after the execution." Thereupon, Prasville stared at M. Nicole with an air of stupefaction. If he had retained the least doubt of the individual's real identity, this manner of dealing with Daubrecq would have removed it. By jingo! To pack a man in a trunk and pitch him on the top of a motor car. No one but Lupin would indulge in such a freak. No one but Lupin would confess it with that ingenious coolness. Thereupon, echoed Prasville, "You decided what?" "I cast about for another method." "What method?" "Why, surely, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, you know as well as I do." "How do you mean?" "Why, weren't you at the execution?" "I was." "In that case, you saw both Vautrin and the executioner hit, one mortally, the other with a slight wound. And you can't fail to see." "Oh," exclaimed Prasville, dumbfounded. "You confess it? It was you who fired the shots, this morning. Come, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, Think, what choice had I? The list of the 27 which you examined was a forgery. Dobreck, who possessed the genuine one, would not arrive until a few hours after the execution. There was therefore but one way for me to save Gilbert and obtain his pardon, and that was to delay the execution by a few hours. Obviously. Well, of course. By killing that infamous brute, that hardened criminal, Vorture, and wounding the executioner, I spread disorder and panic. I made Gilbert's execution physically and morally impossible, and I thus gained the few hours which were indispensable for my purpose. Obviously, repeated Prasville. Well, of course, repeated Lupin, it gives us all, the government, the president and myself, time to reflect and to see the question in a clearer light. What do you think of it, Monsieur le Secrétaire General? Prasville thought a number of things, especially that this Nicole was giving proof, to use a vulgar phrase, of the most infernal cheek, of a cheek so great that Prasville felt inclined to ask himself if he was really right in identifying Nicole with Lupin and Lupin with Nicole. I think, Nicole, that a man has to be a jolly good shot to kill a person whom he wants to kill at a distance of 100 yards, and to wound another person whom he only wants to wound. I have had some little practice, said Nicole, with modest air, and I also think that your plan can only be the fruit of a long preparation. Not at all. That's where you're wrong. It was absolutely spontaneous. If my servant, or rather the servant of the friend who lent me his flat in the Place de Clichy, had not shaken me out of my sleep to tell me that he had once served as a shopman in that little house on the Boulevard Arago, that it did not hold many tenants and that there might be something to be done there, our poor Gilbert would have had his head cut off by now, and Emmy Murgy would most likely be dead. Oh, you think so? I'm sure of it. And that was why I jumped at that faithful retainer's suggestion. Only, you interfered with my plans, Monsieur le Secrétaire General. I did. Yes. You must needs go and take the three-cornered precaution of posting 12 men at the door of my house. I had to climb 5 flights of back stairs and go out through the servants' corridor in the next house. Such useless fatigue. I am very sorry, Nicole. Another time. It was the same thing at 8 o'clock this morning, when I was waiting for the motor which was bringing Dobreck to me in his trunk. I had to march up and down the Place de Clichy so as to prevent the car from stopping outside the door of my place and your men from interfering in my private affairs. Otherwise, once again, Gilbert and Clarice Murgy would have been lost. But, said Prasville, those painful events, it seems to me, are only delayed for a day, 2 days, 3 days at most. To avert them for good and all we should want. The real list, I suppose. Exactly, and I dare say you haven't got it. Yes, I have. The genuine list. The genuine, the undoubtedly genuine list. With the cross of Lorraine. With the cross of Lorraine. Prasville was silent. He was laboring under violent emotion, now that the duel was commencing with that adversary of whose terrifying superiority he was well aware, and he shuddered at the idea that Arsène Lupin, the formidable Arsène Lupin, was there, in front of him, calm and placid, pursuing his aims with as much coolness as though he had all the weapons in his hands and were face to face with a disarmed enemy. Not yet daring to deliver a frontal attack, feeling almost intimidated, Prasville said, "So Dobreck gave it up to you?" "Dobreck gives nothing up. I took it, by main force, therefore." "Oh, dear, no," said Nicole, laughing. "Of course, I was ready to go to all lengths, and, when that worthy Dobreck was dug out of the basket in which he had been traveling express, with an occasional dose of chloroform to keep his strength up, I had prepared things so that the fun might begin at once. Oh, no useless tortures, no vain sufferings, no. Death, simply. You press the point of a long needle on the chest, where the heart is, and insert it gradually, softly and gently. That's all, but the point would have been driven by Mme Murgy. You understand. A mother is pitiless, a mother whose son is about to die. Speak, Dobreck, or I'll go deeper. You won't speak? Then I'll push another 1/4 of an inch, and another still, and the patient's heart stops beating, the heart that feels the needle coming. And another 1/4 of an inch and one more. I swear before heaven that the villain would have spoken. We leant over him and waited for him to wake, trembling with impatience. So urgent was our hurry. Can't you picture the scene, Monsieur le Secrétaire General? The scoundrel lying on a sofa, well bound, bare-chested, making efforts to throw off the fumes of chloroform that dazed him. He breathes quicker. He gasps. He recovers consciousness. His lips move. Already, Clarice Murgy whispers, "It's I, Clarice. Will you answer, you wretch?" She has put her finger on Dorbrek's chest, at the spot where the heart stirs like a little animal hidden under the skin. But she says to me, his eyes. I can't see them under the spectacles. I want to see them. And I also want to see those eyes which I do not know. I want to see their anguish, and I want to read in them, before I hear a word, the secret which is about to burst from the inmost recesses of the terrified body. I want to see. I long to see. The action which I am about to accomplish excites me beyond measure. It seems to me that, when I have seen the eyes, the veil will be rent asunder. I shall know things. It is a presentiment. It is the profound intuition of the truth that keeps me on tenterhooks. The eyeglasses are gone, but the thick opaque spectacles are there still. And I snatch them off, suddenly, startled by a disconcerting vision, dazzled by the quick light that breaks in upon me, and laughing, but laughing fit to break my jaws, with my thumb. Do you understand? With my thumb, hop, I force out the left eye. Nicole was really laughing, as he said, fit to break his jaws. And he was no longer the timid little unctuous and obsequious provincial usher, but a well-set-up fellow, who, after reciting and mimicking the whole scene with impressive ardor, was now laughing with a shrill laughter the sound of which made Prasville's flesh creep. Hop! Jump, Marquis! Out of your kennel, Towser! What's the use of two eyes? It's one more than you want. Hop! I say, Clarice, look at it rolling over the carpet. Mind Dorbrek's eye. Be careful with the grate. Nicole, who had risen and pretended to be hunting after something across the room, now sat down again, took from his pocket a thing shaped like a marble, rolled it in the hollow of his hand, chucked it in the air, like a ball, put it back in his fob, and said, coolly, Dorbrek's left eye. Prasville was utterly bewildered. What was his strange visitor driving at? What did all this story mean? Pale with excitement, he said, explain yourself. But it's all explained, it seems to me. And it fits in so well with things as they were, fits in with all the conjectures which I had been making in spite of myself, and which would inevitably have led to my solving the mystery, if that damned Dorbrek had not so cleverly sent me astray. Yes, follow the trend of my suppositions. As the list is not to be discovered away from Dorbrek, I said to myself, it cannot exist away from Dorbrek. And, as it is not to be discovered in the clothes he wears, it must be hidden deeper still, in himself, to speak plainly, in his flesh, under his skin. In his eye, perhaps, suggested Prasville, by way of a joke. In his eye. Monsieur le Secrétaire General, you have said the word. What? I repeat, in his eye. And it is a truth that ought to have occurred to my mind logically, instead of being revealed to me by accident. And I will tell you why. Dorbrek knew that Clarice had seen a letter from him instructing an English manufacturer to empty the crystal within, so as to leave a void which it was impossible to suspect. Dorbrek was bound, in prudence, to divert any attempt at search. And it was for this reason that he had a crystal stopper made, emptied within, after a model supplied by himself. And it is this crystal stopper which you and I have been after for months, and it is this crystal stopper which I dug out of a packet of tobacco. Whereas all I had to do was what? Asked Prasville, greatly puzzled. Nicole burst into a fresh fit of laughter. Was simply to go for Dorbrek's eye, that I emptied within so as to leave a void which it is impossible to suspect, the eye which you see before you. And Nicole once more took the thing from his pocket and rapped the table with it, producing the sound of a hard body with each rap. Prasville whispered, in astonishment, a glass eye. Why, of course, cried Nicole, laughing gaily. A glass eye. A common or garden decanter stopper, which the rascal stuck into his eye socket in the place of an eye which he had lost. A decanter stopper. Or, if you prefer, a crystal stopper, but the real one, this time, which he faked, which he hid behind the double bulwark of his spectacles and eyeglasses, which contained and still contains the talisman that enabled Dorbrek to work as he pleased in safety. Prasville lowered his head and put his hand to his forehead to hide his flushed face. He was almost possessing the list of the 27. It lay before him, on the table. Mastering his emotion, he said, in a casual tone, "So it is there still?" "At least, I suppose so," declared M. Nicole. "What? You suppose so? I have not opened the hiding place. I thought, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, I would reserve that honor for you." Prasville put out his hand, took the thing up and inspected it. It was a block of crystal, imitating nature to perfection, with all the details of the eyeball, the iris, the pupil, the cornea. He at once saw a movable part at the back, which slid in a groove. He pushed it. The eye was hollow. There was a tiny ball of paper inside. He unfolded it, smoothed it out and, quickly, without delaying to make a preliminary examination of the names, the handwriting, or the signatures, he raised his arms and turned the paper to the light from the windows. "Is the Cross of Lorraine there?" asked M. Nicole. "Yes, it is there," replied Prasville. "This is the genuine list." He hesitated a few seconds and remained with his arms raised, while reflecting what he would do. Then he folded up the paper again, replaced it in its little crystal sheath and put the whole thing in his pocket. M. Nicole, who was looking at him, asked, "Are you convinced?" "Absolutely." "Then we are agreed." "We are agreed." There was a pause, during which the two men watched each other without appearing to. M. Nicole seemed to be waiting for the conversation to be resumed. Prasville, sheltered behind the piles of books on the table, sat with one hand grasping his revolver and the other touching the push of the electric bell. He felt the whole strength of his position with a keen zest. He held the list. He held Lupin. If he moves, he thought, I cover him with my revolver and I ring. If he attacks me, I shoot. And the situation appeared to him so pleasant that he prolonged it, with the exquisite relish of an epicure. In the end, M. Nicole took up the threads. "As we are agreed, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, I think there is nothing left for you to do but to hurry. Is the execution to take place tomorrow?" "Yes, tomorrow." "In that case, I shall wait here." "Wait for what?" "The answer from the Elysee." "Oh, is someone to bring you an answer?" "Yes, you, Monsieur le Secrétaire General." Prasville shook his head. "You must not count on me, M. Nicole." "Really?" said M. Nicole, with an air of surprise. "May I ask the reason?" "I have changed my mind." "Is that all?" "That's all. I have come to the conclusion that, as things stand, after this last scandal, it is impossible to try to do anything in Gilbert's favor. Besides, an attempt in this direction at the Elysee, under present conditions, would constitute a regular case of blackmail, to which I absolutely decline to lend myself. You are free to do as you please, monsieur. Your scruples do you honor, though they come rather late, for they did not trouble you yesterday. But, in that case, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, as the compact between us is destroyed, give me back the list of the 27. "What for?" "So that I may apply to another spokesman." "What's the good?" "Gilbert is lost." "Not at all, not at all. On the contrary, I consider that, now that his accomplice is dead, it will be much easier to grant him a pardon which everybody will look upon as fair and humane. Give me back the list." "Upon my word, monsieur, you have a short memory and none too nice a conscience. Have you forgotten your promise of yesterday?" "Yesterday, I made a promise to a M. Nicole." "Well, you are not M. Nicole." "Indeed. Then, pray, who am I?" "Need I tell you?" M. Nicole made no reply, but began to laugh softly, as though pleased at the curious turn which the conversation was taking, and Prasville felt a vague misgiving at observing that fit of merriment. He grasped the butt end of his revolver and wondered whether he ought not to ring for help. M. Nicole drew his chair close to the desk, put his two elbows on the table, looked Prasville straight in the face and jeered. "So, M. Prasville, you know who I am and you have the assurance to play this game with me." "I have that assurance," said Prasville, accepting the sneer without flinching. "Which proves that you consider me, Arsène Lupin. We may as well use the name. Yes, Arsène Lupin. Which proves that you consider me fool enough, dolt enough to deliver myself like this, bound hand and foot into your hands." "Upon my word," said Prasville, airily, patting the waistcoat pocket in which he had secreted the crystal ball, "I don't quite see what you can do, M. Nicole, now that Daubrecq's eye is here, with a list of the 27 inside it." "What I can do?" echoed M. Nicole, ironically. "Yes, the talisman no longer protects you. and you are now no better off than any other man who might venture into the very heart of the police office, among some dozens of stalwart fellows posted behind each of those doors, and some hundreds of others who will hasten up at the first signal. Nicole shrugged his shoulders and gave Prasville a look of great commiseration. Shall I tell you what is happening, Monsieur le Secrétaire General? Well, you two are having your head turned by all this business. Now that you possess the list, your state of mind has suddenly sunk to that of a Daubrec or a d'Albufex. There is no longer even a question, in your thoughts, of taking it to your superiors, so that this ferment of disgrace and discord may be ended. No, a sudden temptation has seized upon you and intoxicated you. And, losing your head, you say to yourself, "It is here, in my pocket. With its aid, I am omnipotent." It means wealth, absolute, unbounded power. Why not benefit by it? Why not let Gilbert and Clarice Murgy die? Why not lock up that idiot of a Lupin? Why not seize this unparalleled piece of fortune by the forelock? He bent toward Prasville and, very softly, in a friendly and confidential tone, said, "Don't do that. My dear sir, don't do it. And why not? It is not to your interest, believe me. Really, no. Or, if you absolutely insist on doing it, have the kindness first to consult the 27 names on the list of which you have just rubbed me and reflect, for a moment, on the name of the third person on it." "Oh, and what is the name of that third person?" "It is the name of a friend of yours." "What friend?" "Stanislas Vorenglade, the ex-deputy." "And then," said Prasville, who seemed to be losing some of his self-confidence, "then, ask yourself if an inquiry, however summary, would not end by discovering, behind that Stanislas Vorenglade, the name of one who shared certain little profits with him, and whose name is Louis Prasville." Nicole banged the table with his fist. "Enough of this humbug, monsieur. For 20 minutes, you and I have been beating about the bush. That will do. Let us understand each other. And, to begin with, drop your pistols. You can't imagine that I am frightened of those playthings. Stand up, sir, stand up, as I am doing, and finish the business. I am in a hurry." He put his hand on Prasville's shoulder and, speaking with great deliberation, said, "If, within an hour from now, you are not back from the Elysee, bringing with you a line to say that the decree of pardon has been signed. If, within 1 hour and 10 minutes, I, Arsène Lupin, do not walk out of this building safe and sound and absolutely free, this evening 4 Paris newspapers will receive 4 letters selected from the correspondence exchange between Stanislas Vorenglade and yourself. The correspondence which Stanislas Vorenglade sold me this morning. Here's your hat. Here's your overcoat. Here's your stick. Be off. I will wait for you." Then happened this extraordinary and yet easily understood thing, that Prasville did not raise the slightest protest nor make the least show of fight. He received the sudden, far-reaching, utter conviction of what the personality known as Arsène Lupin meant in all its breadth and fullness. He did not so much as think of carping, of pretending, as he had until then believed, that the letters had been destroyed by Vorenglade the deputy, or, at any rate, that Vorenglade would not dare to hand them over, because, in so doing, Vorenglade was also working his own destruction. No, Prasville did not speak a word. He felt himself caught in a vice of which no human strength could force the jaws asunder. There was nothing to do but yield. He yielded. "Here, in an hour," repeated Nicole. "In an hour," said Prasville, tamely. Nevertheless, in order to know exactly where he stood, he added, "The letters, of course, will be restored to me against Gilbert's pardon." "How do you mean?" "No. In that case, there is no object in. They will be restored to you, intact, 2 months after the day when my friends and I have brought about Gilbert's escape, thanks to the very slack watch which will be kept upon him, in accordance with your orders." "Is that all?" "No, there are 2 further conditions. First, the immediate payment of a check for 40,000 francs. 40,000 francs. The sum for which Stanislas Vorenglade sold me the letters. It is only fair. And next, secondly, your resignation, within 6 months, of your present position." "My resignation? But why?" Nicole made a very dignified gesture. "Because it is against public morals that one of the highest positions in the police service should be occupied by a man whose hands are not absolutely clean. Make them send you to Parliament or appoint you a minister, a councillor of state, an ambassador. In short, any post which your success in the Dobrecht case entitles you to demand. But not Secretary General of Police, anything but that. The very thought of it disgusts me. Prasville reflected for a moment. He would have rejoiced in the sudden destruction of his adversary, and he racked his brain for the means to effect it. But he was helpless. He went to the door and called, Lartigue, and, sinking his voice, but not very low, for he wished Nicole to hear, Lartigue, dismiss your men. It's a mistake, and let no one come into my office while I am gone. This gentleman will wait for me here. He came back, took the hat, stick and overcoat which Nicole handed him and went out. Well done, sir, said Lupin, between his teeth, when the door was closed. You have behaved like a sportsman and a gentleman. So did I, for that matter, perhaps with too obvious a touch of contempt and a little too bluntly. But, tush, this sort of business has to be carried through with a high hand. The enemy's got to be staggered. Besides, when one's own conscience is clear, one can't take up too bullying a tone with that sort of individual. Lift your head, Lupin. You have been the champion of outraged morality. Be proud of your work. And now take a chair, stretch out your legs and have a rest. You deserved it. When Prasville returned, he found Lupin sound asleep and had to tap him on the shoulder to wake him. Is it done? Asked Lupin. It's done. The pardon will be signed presently. Here is the written promise. The 40,000 francs. Here's your check. Good. It but remains for me to thank you, monsieur. So the correspondence, the Stanislas Vorenglade correspondence will be handed to you on the conditions stated. However, I am glad to be able to give you, here and now, as a sign of my gratitude, the 4 letters which I meant to send to the papers this evening. Oh, so you had them on you, said Prasville. I felt so certain, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, that we should end by coming to an understanding. He took from his hat a fat envelope, sealed with 5 red seals, which was pinned inside the lining, and handed it to Prasville, who thrust it into his pocket. Then he said, Monsieur le Secrétaire General, I don't know when I shall have the pleasure of seeing you again. If you have the least communication to make to me, 1 line in the agony column of the journal will be sufficient. Just head it, Nicole. Good day to you. And he withdrew. Prasville, when he was alone, felt as if he were waking from a nightmare, during which he had performed incoherent actions over which his conscious mind had no control. He was almost thinking of ringing and causing a stir in the passages. But, just then, there was a tap at the door and one of the office messengers came hurrying in. What's the matter? Asked Prasville. Monsieur le Secrétaire General, it's Monsieur le Député Dobrecht asking to see you, on a matter of the highest importance. Dobrecht, exclaimed Prasville, in bewilderment. Dobrecht here. Show him in. Dobrecht had not waited for the order. He ran up to Prasville, out of breath, with his clothes in disorder, a bandage over his left eye, no tie, no collar, looking like an escaped lunatic. And the door was not closed before he caught hold of Prasville with his 2 enormous hands. Have you the list? Yes. Have you bought it? Yes. At the price of Gilbert's pardon? Yes. Is it signed? Yes. Dobrecht made a furious gesture. You fool! You fool! You've been trapped. For hatred of me, I expect. And now you're going to take your revenge. With a certain satisfaction, Dobrecht. Remember my little friend, the opera dancer, at Nice. It's your turn now to dance. So it means prison. I should think so, said Prasville. Besides, it doesn't matter. You're done for. Anyhow, deprived of the list, without defense of any kind, you're bound to fall to pieces of your own weight. And I shall be present at the breakup. That's my revenge. And you believe that? Yelled Dobrecht, furiously. You believe that they will wring my neck like a chicken's and that I shall not know how to defend myself and that I have no claws left and no teeth to bite with. Well, my boy, if I do come to grief, there's always one who will fall with me, and that is Master Prasville, the partner of Stanislas Vorenglade, who is going to hand me every proof in existence against him, so that I may get him sent to gaol without delay. Ah, I've got you fixed, old chap. With those letters, you'll go as I please. Hang it all, and there will be fine days yet for Dobrecht the deputy. What? You're laughing, are you? Perhaps those letters don't exist. Prasville shrugged his shoulders. Yes, they exist, but Vorenglade no longer has them in his possession. Since when? Since this morning. Vorenglade sold them, 2 hours ago, for the sum of 40,000 francs, and I have bought them back at the same price. Dobreck burst into a great roar of laughter. Lord, how funny. 40,000 francs. You paid 40,000 francs. To M. Nicole, I suppose. Who sold you the list of the 27? Well, would you like me to tell you the real name of M. Nicole? It's Arsène Lupin. I know that. Very likely. But what you don't know, you silly ass, is that I have come straight from Stanislas Vorenglade's and that Stanislas Vorenglade left Paris 4 days ago. Oh, what a joke. They've sold you waste paper. And your 40,000 francs. What an ass. What an ass. He walked out of the room, screaming with laughter and leaving Prasville absolutely dumbfounded. So Arsène Lupin possessed no proof at all. And, when he was threatening and commanding and treating Prasville with that airy insolence, it was all a farce, all bluff. No, it's impossible, thought the Secretary-General. I have the sealed envelope. It's here. I have only to open it. He dared not open it. He handled it, weighed it, examined it, and doubt made its way so swiftly into his mind that he was not in the least surprised, when he did open it, to find that it contained 4 blank sheets of notepaper. Well, he said, I am no match for those rascals. But all is not over yet, and, in point of fact, all was not over. If Lupin had acted so daringly, it showed that the letters existed and that he relied upon buying them from Stanislas Vorenglade. But, as, on the other hand, Vorenglade was not in Paris, Prasville's business was simply to forestall Lupin's steps with regard to Vorenglade and obtain the restitution of those dangerous letters from Vorenglade at all costs. The first to arrive would be the victor. Prasville once more took his hat, coat and stick, went downstairs, stepped into a taxi and drove to Vorenglade's flat. Here he was told that the ex-deputy was expected home from London at 6 o'clock that evening. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Prasville therefore had plenty of time to prepare his plan. He arrived at the Gare du Nord at 5 o'clock and posted all around, in the waiting rooms and in the railway offices, the 3 or 4 dozen detectives whom he had brought with him. This made him feel easy. If M. Nicole tried to speak to Vorenglade, they would arrest Lupin. And, to make assurance doubly sure, they would arrest whosoever could be suspected of being either Lupin or one of Lupin's emissaries. Moreover, Prasville made a close inspection of the whole station. He discovered nothing suspicious. But, at 10 minutes to 6, Chief Inspector Blancon, who was with him, said, Look, there's Dobreck. Dobreck it was. And the sight of his enemy exasperated the Secretary-General to such a pitch that he was on the verge of having him arrested. But he reflected that he had no excuse, no right, no warrant for the arrest. Besides, Dobreck's presence proved, with still greater force, that everything now depended on Stanislas Vorenglade. Vorenglade possessed the letters. Who would end by having them? Dobreck? Lupin? Or he? Prasville? Lupin was not there and could not be there. Dobreck was not in a position to fight. There could be no doubt, therefore, about the result. Prasville would re-enter into possession of his letters and, through this very fact, would escape Dobreck's threats and Lupin's threats and recover all his freedom of action against them. The train arrived. In accordance with orders, the station master had issued instructions that no one was to be admitted to the platform. Prasville, therefore, walked on alone, in front of a number of his men, with Chief Inspector Blancon at their head. The train drew up. Prasville almost at once saw Stanislas Vorenglade at the window of a first-class compartment, in the middle of the train. The ex-deputy alighted and then held out his hand to assist an old gentleman who was traveling with him. Prasville ran up to him and said, eagerly, Vorenglade, I want to speak to you. At the same moment, Dobreck, who had managed to pass the barrier, appeared and exclaimed, M. Vorenglade, I have had your letter. I am at your disposal. Vorenglade looked at the 2 men, recognized Prasville, recognized Dobreck, and smiled. Oh, it seems that my return was awaited with some impatience. What's it all about? Certain letters, I expect. Yes, replied the 2 men, fussing around him. You're too late, he declared. Hey, what? What do you mean? I mean that the letters are sold. Sold? To whom? To this gentleman, said Vorenglade, pointing to his traveling companion. To this gentleman, who thought that the business was worth going out of his way for and who came to Amiens to meet me. The old gentleman, a very old man wrapped in furs and leaning on his stick, took off his hat and bowed. "It's Lupin," thought Prasville. "It's Lupin, beyond a doubt." And he glanced toward the detectives, was nearly calling them, but the old gentleman explained. "Yes, I thought the letters were good enough to warrant a few hours' railway journey and the cost of 2 return tickets. 2 tickets? One for me and the other for one of my friends." "One of your friends?" "Yes, he left us a few minutes ago and reached the front part of the train through the corridor. He was in a great hurry." Prasville understood. Lupin had taken the precaution to bring an accomplice, and the accomplice was carrying off the letters. The game was lost, to a certainty. Lupin had a firm grip on his victim. There was nothing to do but submit and accept the conqueror's conditions. "Very well, sir," said Prasville. "We shall see each other when the time comes. Goodbye for the present, Dobreck. You shall hear from me." And, drawing Vorenglade aside, "As for you, Vorenglade, you are playing a dangerous game." "Dear me," said the ex-deputy. "And why?" The two men moved away. Dobreck had not uttered a word and stood motionless, as though rooted to the ground. The old gentleman went up to him and whispered, "I say, Dobreck, wake up, old chap. It's the chloroform, I expect." Dobreck clenched his fists and gave a muttered growl. "Ah, I see you know me," said the old gentleman. "Then you will remember our interview, some months ago, when I came to see you in the square Lamartine and asked you to intercede in Gilbert's favor. I said to you that day, 'Lay down your arms, save Gilbert, and I will leave you in peace. If not, I shall take the list of the 27 from you, and then you're done for.' Well, I have a strong suspicion that done for is what you are. That comes of not making terms with kind M. Lupin. Sooner or later, you're bound to lose your boots by it. However, let it be a lesson to you. By the way, here's your pocketbook which I forgot to give you. Excuse me if you find it lightened of its contents. There were not only a decent number of banknotes in it, but also the receipt from the warehouse where you stored the Engian things which you took back from me. I thought I might as well save you the trouble of taking them out yourself. It ought to be done by now. No, don't thank me. It's not worth mentioning. Goodbye, Dobreck. And, if you should want a louis or two, to buy yourself a new decanter stopper, drop me a line. Goodbye, Dobreck." He walked away. He had not gone 50 steps when he heard the sound of a shot. He turned round. Dobreck had blown his brains out. "De profundis," murmured Lupin, taking off his hat. 2 months later, Gilbert, whose sentence had been commuted to one of penal servitude for life, made his escape from the Isle de Ré on the day before that on which he was to have been transported to New Caledonia. It was a strange escape. Its least details remained difficult to understand, and, like the 2 shots on the Boulevard Arago, it greatly enhanced Arsène Lupin's prestige. "Taken all round," said Lupin to me, one day, after telling me the different episodes of the story, "taken all around, no enterprise has ever given me more trouble or cost me greater exertions than that confounded adventure which, if you don't mind, we will call the Crystal Stopper, or Never Say Die. In 12 hours, between 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening, I made up for 6 months of bad luck, blunders, gropings in the dark and reverses. I certainly count those 12 hours among the finest and the most glorious of my life." "And Gilbert?" I asked. "What became of him?" "He is farming his own land, way down in Algeria, under his real name, his only name of Antoine Murgy. He is married to an Englishwoman, and they have a son whom he insisted on calling Arsène. I often receive a bright, chatty, warm-hearted letter from him. And Emmy Murgy, she and her little Jacques are living with them. Did you see her again?" "I did not." "Really?" Lupin hesitated for a few moments and then said with a smile, "My dear fellow, I will let you into a secret that will make me seem ridiculous in your eyes. But you know that I have always been as sentimental as a schoolboy and as silly as a goose. Well, on the evening when I went back to Clarice Murgy and told her the news of the day, part of which, for that matter, she already knew, I felt 2 things very thoroughly. One was that I entertained for her a much deeper feeling than I thought. The other that she, on the contrary, entertained for me a feeling which was not without contempt, not without a rankling grudge nor even a certain aversion." "Nonsense! Why?" "Why? Because Clarice Murgy is an exceedingly honest woman and because I am just Arsène Lupin." "Oh, dear me, Yes, an attractive bandit, a romantic and chivalrous cracksman, anything you please. For all that, in the eyes of a really honest woman, with an upright nature and a well-balanced mind, I am only the merest riffraff. I saw that the wound was sharper than he was willing to admit, and I said, "So you really loved her?" "I even believe," he said, in a jesting tone, "that I asked her to marry me. After all, I had saved her son, had I not?" So, I thought, what a rebuff. It produced a coolness between us. Since then, you have forgotten her? Oh, certainly, but it required the consolations of 1 Italian, 2 Americans, 3 Russians, a German Grand Duchess and a Chinawoman to do it. And after that, so as to place an insuperable barrier between myself and her, I got married. Nonsense. You got married. You, Arsène Lupin. Married, wedded, spliced, in the most lawful fashion. One of the greatest names in France. An only daughter. A colossal fortune. What? You don't know the story? Well, it's worth hearing. And, straightway, Lupin, who was in a confidential vein, began to tell me the story of his marriage to Angélique de Sauzeau-Vendôme, Princess de Bourbon-Condé, today Sister Marie-Auguste, a humble nun in the Visitation Convent. But, after the first few words, he stopped, as though his narrative had suddenly ceased to interest him, and he remained pensive. "What's the matter, Lupin?" "The matter? Nothing. Yes, yes. There. Now you're smiling. Is it Dobrek's secret receptacle, his glass eye, that's making you laugh?" "Not at all." "What then?" "Nothing, I tell you. Only a memory. A pleasant memory." "Yes. Yes, a delightful memory even. It was at night, off the Isle de Ré, on the fishing smack in which Clarice and I were taking Gilbert away. We were alone, the 2 of us, in the stern of the boat. And I remember. I talked. I spoke words and more words. I said all that I had on my heart. And then came silence, a perturbing and disarming silence. Well, I swear to you that the woman whom I took in my arms that night and kissed on the lips, oh, not for long, a few seconds only, but no matter. I swear before heaven that she was something more than a grateful mother, something more than a friend yielding to a moment of susceptibility, that she was a woman also, a woman quivering with emotion. And he continued, with a bitter laugh, who ran away next day, never to see me again. He was silent once more. Then he whispered, "Clarice, Clarice, on the day when I am tired and disappointed and weary of life, I will come to you down there, in your little Arab house, in that little white house, Clarice, where you are waiting for me." And that brings us to the end of The Crystal Stopper by Maurice Leblanc. We hope you've enjoyed this captivating tale of intrigue, deception, and adventure with Arsène Lupin. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. Your support means a lot to us and helps us bring more timeless classics to life. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like the video to show your appreciation. Share it with friends who love classic literature and thrilling mysteries. Leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts. What was your favorite part of this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you'll never miss our next audiobook adventure. We have more incredible stories coming your way. Once again, thank you for being part of this journey. We look forward to seeing you again for more amazing tales. Until next time, happy listening.